Well, aren't you a regular Nancy Drew?
I learned that from the Nancy Drew Detective.
Okay, go.
You think you can follow the clues and solve the case of the missing condiment, Nancy Drew?
Because I've read every Nancy Drew mystery ever written.
Nancy, please tell me you're joking.
Wow, you suck at this Nancy Drew stuff. You should get a new hobby.
My name is Carson Drew, and this is my assistant, Nancy.
Nancy Drew.
It's curtains for you, Miss Drew.
Nancy Drew strikes again.
A regular Nancy Drew.
Hello, regular Drews.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to episode 88. We're so hyped.
Yes.
This is my favorite game.
Is it really?
I think, well, okay. After I've played it this time, I don't know that it is the best game.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I can see some critiques with it that I probably have, but I still love it the most.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Just for the vibes alone. And that's, of course, number 11, Curse of Blackmoor Manor.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think, Kori?
It's definitely not my favorite, I have to say. Objectively, it's a fantastic game. I think we mentioned this at the end of our last episode, but I think that this may have been Her Interactive's most ambitious game for the time. It's certainly the first game set not in the United States, so that was a exciting challenge for them to add that element to it. But it's also definitely the longest game in the series thus far.
Yeah.
Again, not my favorite by any means. It's definitely still a very fun game. There are some critiques that I have about it that maybe some plot elements get a little bit absurd, that it doesn't quite get a favorite for me, but it is definitely still a really fun one, and I can see why it's a fan favorite for sure.
Yeah, I just think, I don't know, for me, it does not get better than, being in an old, spooky manor house in Britain, and I don't know if that's just, my inner Agatha Christie nerd, coming out or what, but it's, medieval, and, the concept of, the Beast of Blackmoor, and all of this history. I think that's what impresses me the most about the game, is we were talking about this just a little while ago. There are so many pen villains. I don't have a full count, but there are so many pen villains. There are at least 23 just main descendants, 23 generations, I guess, mentioned in the game. But then there are also those people have siblings, and it's so many, just so much history and lore. And I need to talk to whoever it was that decided that that's what they were going to do, because it's so intense.
Yeah.
So intense. And you can learn about every single one of them. Not a lot sometimes, but enough,
Right.
Isn't that insane?
It's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I'm really excited to talk about that as far as the history goes and the lore, because I do feel so much of that history with the Penvillain family is it ends up being referenced kind of vaguely later, and when I'm reading about it, I'm oh, is this a reference to that, or is that a reference to that?
Right.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that in future games they don't reference the Penvillain family more than
they definitely do.
They do sometimes, but I'm there's so much here. You could make a series of games just based off the Penvillain history alone.
Yeah.
But
we need to read the other book that this is based off of, because this is based off of two books. One is oh my gosh,
I don't know.
1 second. I know
it's not Morsey Manor.
Yes, that was it.
Oh.
So Mystery at Morsey Manor, which we have read and we've covered on the podcast, and the
just
other one is
this.
Yeah, the only real similarity is that it's set at an old manor on a moor, and there's the family called the Trevellins. So kind of similar to Penvillain, but then the other book is The Bluebeard Room, which we have not read, but I've heard is absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people say you guys need to read The Bluebeard Room.
Yes.
So we definitely will at some point. But
yeah,
I know.
I don't know. I don't know if the vibes really hit for me on this one.
Yeah.
I said this in our scoop sesh where we were talking about the vacation destinations, but I think that this manor is just absolutely hideous. And I don't know, the vibes just don't do it for me at all.
It's so funny. I laughed so hard because at some point, Mrs. Petrov, Linda's mom, says that their rooms looked like they were decorated by a medieval monkey. And I was like, oh my God.
I made a note of that.
It's like, Kori will appreciate those. Kori will appreciate
definitely did, yes.
I mean, she's totally right, to be fair. I also agree that the decoration is like gothic and gaudy and like really intense. I just have to love it, but it's it's crazy. So
yeah, and that is not a critique of the game designers by any means. I think that the artists for this game did a great job in depicting what a real life English manor would actually look like. Just English manors happen to be, in my opinion, absolutely hideous. And I thought Miss Petrov's comment was pretty on the nose. So I don't know. I feel like when I'm in there, everything just feels dark and probably smells moldy and mildewy. And it's like, even the library is like not a place where I want to spend my time, and all the other libraries in the games are so gorgeous to me that I don't know.
No, so the manor itself was built in like what, the 1300s, and so it's a true medieval manor, which is crazy. Like I don't know how many of those still exist. So it's surprising that there hasn't been like a serious fire or anything like that.
Or I guess there has since the kitchen, but
small explosions perhaps, but
the conservatory is beautiful, but the rest of the house, it's like, oh, bright blue wallpaper with red wood and purple tapestries, and Zeus is painted on the wall for some reason, and it's like, I don't know. Yeah, it's all just, it's a lot. Visually, it's overwhelming for me. There's just a lot going on. So
it is a lot going on, and that also kind of plays into I think just overall there's a lot going on in the game, like as far as decor goes, as far as history goes, but also as far as puzzles and plot lines go. There's a lot, and so it can feel really overwhelming. I remember it feeling, not now of course because I've played the game a bajillion times by this point, so I understand everything that's happening, but like back when I was playing it for the first time when I was younger, I was like, this is almost so overwhelming. I don't know what to do. It's because there's so much. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I remember feeling that way. And I can definitely see how someone playing this game for the first time could feel that way. Because it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. I do also want to say, in respect to the puzzles, that they are really hard.
Some of them are. But
and it does kind of seem like, in retrospect, it seems like a lot of the puzzles are kind of loaded at the end. And so I feel like in that respect, it's not super well balanced. I definitely don't think the game as a whole is particularly balanced and well structured because of the puzzles, because of the fact, the kind of the order that you have to do it in. Sometimes you'll end up doing puzzles that you don't really understand why you're doing them at the time. And so I think there could probably be some improvements there. And I do also feel like a lot of the puzzles they put, and I know this is a mystery puzzle game, so of course the point is some of the puzzles, but it just seemed like so many puzzles. Like we're doing so many puzzles for puzzles' sake. It almost feels like a Professor Layton game. I don't know if you know about those or not, but I've played a little bit of them, and it's just the whole point is the puzzles, and so it kind of feels like they're trying to load as many in there as they can.
It almost feels like that it might just be a product of the time that this is the most amount of puzzles that Her Interactive has ever put into a single game. And so I think that at the time they were like, how do we jam pack this? Because clearly people love the puzzles. That's what they want to see from the series. So how do we give them more of that going forward? And so it took them a little bit of time to figure out exactly the pacing and everything that they needed to do for that. So it was a nice start. But yeah, definitely, I agree. They do seem kind of heavy at the end.
Something we think we do need to talk about in this game is the music, though.
I love the music
because it's great, particularly Brigitte's song that they come up with. That song, once you hear it, it is stuck in your head forever. I could sing that to you right now. From the moment you hear it until I go to sleep at night, it's in my head. And I don't know who wrote that, but like, geez Louise. And it's just like a nursery rhyme.
Right.
But it's like, Brigitte with her eyes so bright. Like, it's just, it's just in my head.
I would assume it's Kevin Manthe that did the music for this one, because I know he did the soundtrack for it, so I would assume he's the one that wrote the lyrics for that as well. I'd have to double check, but I think that this might be like the first time we get lyrics to any of the songs in the games as well. Unless you want to count The Secrets Can Kill rap that did not make it into the final product. Kevin Manthe did do the lyrics for that one, but no.
Yeah.
So absolutely iconic soundtrack for this one.
And I think the thing that I love the most about it, and it's like definitely the vibes like I was telling you about, but I think the reason why I love it so much is because of how like goofy and campy it kind of is.
It definitely is, yeah.
Because it's just so, it's like someone asked, like, if we could write a gothic mystery, what is everything that we could put in there, and then turn it up to like 12,
right?
And like just absolutely just go so hard, like the whole Beast of Blackmoor concept, like a sickly woman with another plot we'll have to talk about later too, and like just, I don't know, even like the searching for like the plastic illuminated ghosts in the middle of the night, that is my favorite activity in the game,
of course.
And it's just so funny, and like going around and like lighting up gargoyles and going down slides. It's like, what kind of gothic fever dream is this? Right. And thank you for pumping it straight into my veins, because it's so goofy. It's so goofy.
Yeah.
Like that's why I love it so much, is because of the camp.
Another thing I love is all the cutscenes that you can get in this game that make it, all those spooky little moments and everything that you may not even get at all in the game, that they did so much to put little things in there that you don't even have to see to finish the mystery or to solve things, but you can get it. And next time you replay, you might get totally different cutscenes. And so it's always really fun to replay this game for that reason.
I still think I don't know how many times I've played this game. I still think there's a cutscene that I still haven't gotten. Or
probably.
Nancy is supposed to, I think, get a letter with a tooth at one point.
I've never
seen that. I have never seen that. I swear. I mean, like, maybe I did when I was young and I've just forgotten, but like, maybe. I have no memory of that at all. And this time in my playthrough, I know I didn't get a lot, and I think that's just because I kind of knew what I was doing, so I was being kind of like efficient in the way I was playing it, and so I feel like I didn't go to sleep enough, and all that kind of thing to be able to get some of the cutscenes. But yeah, there's a lot, and they're all like kind of really weird and like hidden, and it's kind of unclear what triggers them, and so you never know what you're gonna get.
And it's all based on the way you play. So just because you played this way one time, you didn't get the cutscenes, but if you were to play, you would play almost a different game because of the different things that you're seeing. Yeah. I think the lady in black walking down the hallway and then she leaves the goggles, I don't think I got that my entire childhood. I think I was an adult before I saw that for the first time, which is just so fun that I don't normally love like alternate endings in games or anything, but I do love this, like you can play and still find new things about the game every single time that just make it new and exciting and fresh, even though you've played it 100 times.
It's almost like little Easter eggs. It's like little rewards for people coming back and playing multiple times, Yeah. I do wish there was a way where I could know that I could get them all. Yeah. Because I am a little bit of a completionist sometimes.
Of course.
And so I want to be able to know what triggers them so that if I want to see a cutscene, I have the ability to. But I can understand how that might lose a little bit of the specialness. I just wish there was just some kind of secret code I could crack so I could know for myself.
I'm sure somebody's figured it out.
Maybe.
Somebody out there knows all the triggers for all the cutscenes.
Yeah.
I don't know them off the top of my head, so.
Well, oh well. Yeah. But overall, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
3 words?
Okay, so monsters has to be a word.
Of course.
Because of the Beast of Blackmoor, werewolf stuff, Jane's monster book.
Mhm.
Monsters is just such a heavy theme. The plants are like monstrous.
Yeah.
And it's just very monster vibes. Oh, the game you play with Jane, it's like Go Fish, Monster or something, Madness or
Go
Mash
Dig or Monster.
I don't know.
There's several in there that are kind of spooky themed board games.
Right. Yeah. So definitely monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And then other than that, I don't know. I thought maybe like Brits because because they're all British, but I don't. I don't know. It's just because it's populated by so many British accents,
which it has to be,
right? And then I mean, it feels kind of basic, but I thought maybe alchemy or
alchemy.
You could also do like astrology or astronomy, the stars.
Genealogy would be a good one.
Yeah.
Or
maybe like
just rich people problems.
Yes, they are rich people problems. Yeah. I like that. Monsters, alchemy, and rich people problems.
There we go. Yep, perfect.
Oh, so funny. Okay. Before we jump into the summary, I do want to just take a moment to talk about the gameplay. This is game number 11. And so we have, our classic menu, our classic stacked books menu with our intro music, choice of junior and senior detective. We also get a notes and a task list in this game and an inventory as well as our cell phone. Woo!
Yay!
He finally has a cell phone that we can use to call people and have access to the internet. There's also, this is weird. I assume it's because this was in a previous game, but her phone has like an option to go to email, but you can't send email because she's abroad. Or that's at least the reason. You can't send
an email from any of the games, though.
Yeah. But so I don't know why that's there, why that's a feature. It seems a little random.
To receive the email?
Yeah, because it's like if we're not... The email, so she has a couple emails in her phone, but she's not able to send any. And the emails are one from the Hardy Boys and then one from Bess and George. And it's like minor plot stuff. Like the Hardy Boys are working on installing a satellite dish or something, and Bess and George are like going to camp. So it's not a sailing camp, actually, which is, I think is funny. But, but so it's not like major plot points or anything. And we can't talk to Bess and George. We can't talk to Frank and Joe. So it's kind of like, why is this in here?
Yeah. They did this in all of the games at the time, that you just have some emails in your inbox that explains why you can't contact your phone characters. Like, I know in one of them is like, Carson's tinkering in the garage today, so he can't. He's unavailable,
Okay.
So.
Yeah, okay, I guess, yeah.
Just, I think it's just a product of it being, 2004? So.
Yeah, and then also this game is similar to Scarlet Hand that we played, in that you have a time control in your room with an alarm clock to change the time, but the way you work through the game, you can do it pretty much in any order. It's just certain characters and things will only happen at certain times of the day. Yeah. And so this summary that we're about to go through is just an order of the game, but you can do it, of course, in any order.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to start us off, Kori?
Sure. So just as many of the other games in this era, we start off with our letter that we're writing. We're writing to Ned this time. And Nancy is explaining that she is currently on her way to England to Blackmoor Manor because she is going to go check on the daughter of a family friend of theirs named Linda. I guess this is like one of the Drew's neighbors or something. That Linda recently got married to this man named Hugh Penvillin, who is from England and lives in this Blackmoor Manor. Yes, okay. So Linda has started acting a little bit strangely ever since she got married to Hugh and moved over to England. And I guess Hugh travels a lot for work, so Linda is basically just by herself in this manor with just her stepdaughter and her husband's aunt, who also live in the manor.
Which, by the way, can we talk about how you just get married to your wife or whatever? And I know this is your job or whatever, but like you leave her alone with her new stepdaughter and they've been married for like what? 6 months? Like
not even, because they say
3 months
she has
or something?
to be there for 6 months before she'll inherit Blackmoor Manor rightfully or whatever.
Like, what the hell, dude?
Yeah.
That's wild. Anyway.
You like basically just finished your honeymoon and you're already jetting
you're
off or whatever.
single momming it.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And he might be off with his ex-wife, potentially.
Yes! Okay, we have to talk about this later.
We will talk about this later, definitely.
Anyway.
Okay, but essentially Blackmoor Manor is this super old, centuries-old mansion. Like you said, I think like 13th century is about when it was built.
Well, 14th century, 1300s.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Thank you. So it's very old and it's got this really impressive history. Basically, the Penvillens have always owned this place, or basically they've always owned it and lived there. But some strange things have been happening with Linda's health ever since she's moved in. So Mrs. Petrov, who is Linda's mom, the neighbor, has asked Nancy to just come over, check on her, see what's going on, try to get to the bottom of why she's been acting so strangely. So if we look in the web browser in our phone, which is a really fun feature, there is some information about Blackmoor Manor, which we learn is located in Essex County. It was built in the 1300s by a warrior named Randolph the Red, and apparently he win some battle, and so he was gifted this land by the king or whatever. And his descendants they took on the last name of the area that Blackmoor Manor was built in, which is Penvillen. So that's how they became the Penvillen family, and they've lived here pretty much ever since it was built, although there was a time in the 1600s where they were not there, and we'll get into why later. But Nancy is in her taxi after we get done with the letter here. Nancy is dropped off by her taxi at the front gate of the manor. It is nighttime, and we get this cutscene where she's walking up this very long path up the front door. And it's this big, grand manor, right, with some, greenery garden area up the front path. And we go and we're about to knock on the door, but then this low, creepy voice just goes, Nancy, from out in out in the dark somewhere. So Nancy gasps, turns around really quickly, but no one's there. So she's like, okay, whatever. Turns around, knocks on the door. And then we hear growling behind us. So we look back over our shoulders and we see a pair of red eyes staring at us from the hedges. And so we kind of get freaked out by this, but at the same moment, the front door opens, and it's opened by this woman named Mrs. Drake, who is Hugh's aunt. And by this time, the red eyes have completely disappeared, and Mrs. Drake is like, what's going on? Why are you so upset? What's out there? Nothing's out there, child. You Americans are so freaked out by everything that happens on the moor. You're seeing things. Just come inside. Mrs. Drake does not seem to like Americans very much.
No.
She's very snotty about American teenagers and their loud music, and she won't stand for it. Yeah, we love to just shit all over Americans in this one.
Yeah. To be fair, so when did this come out? This came out in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is probably the peak of American European travel and probably truly shitty Americans, over there. So we got the stereotype for a reason. It's just we hope at this point we've moved a little bit forward, but this is 2004, so I don't blame them that much for leaning into it.
Not to defend Americans by any means. I know that a lot of times Americans are trash when we go abroad and make fools of ourselves in foreign countries, but I feel like there is also the stereotype of the British people hating Americans for no reason. Oh, you came over here and how dare you not say lift instead of elevator, and you don't know what a torch is, you idiot. And okay, calm down. We don't have to do that much. But anyway, so she invites us inside and tells us where our bedroom is. It's going to be up on the second floor. Nancy asks first if she can go talk to Linda, but Mrs. Drake says that Linda is not up to seeing anyone right now. So she tells us to go unpack and then come downstairs to talk to her more. She'll be in the conservatory. So now we're immediately transported to our bedroom where we're going to be staying. This is kind of our little home base during our trip. And it is this ornately decorated bedroom. It's just this hodgepodge of looks like relics from this family's travels that they have taken Egyptian-inspired stuff and Asian-inspired stuff. And there's just a lot of different design features going throughout the room.
Well, the bedroom specifically is celestial themed and also themed astrologically and Roman gods themed. So it's
right.
It's three themes mashed into one.
Roman god, but also some Egyptian gods in there too. There's some Egyptian art on the wall. There is.
I missed that.
Yeah, directly next to Zeus. Yeah. But we've got a 4-poster canopy bed and this absolutely massive stone fireplace. And then above the fireplace is like a coat of arms. And we'll learn this is Brigitte's coat of arms over the fireplace here, who was a pen villain. Yeah, there's this massive mural on the wall with, I think this is like Zeus pulling or riding in a chariot. It might not be Zeus, some Greek god in.
Yeah, I think it's Jupiter.
Or could be Roman.
Right? I think they're
Jupiter.
Roman gods. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so we look around in our room a little bit, but then we can go downstairs and talk to Mrs. Drake again. But on our way to the conservatory, we have to pass by another bedroom. And when we do, we hear like a young girl talking to someone named Ethel. We'll learn later that the little girl is named Jane, who is Linda's stepdaughter, and Ethel is her tutor. And she basically just is homeschooled and has to be in lessons from like 6 a.m. to like 3 p.m. every single day. It's really intense. Yes. And then we'll pass by Linda's bedroom door on our way downstairs, and she's clearly on the phone with her husband, Hugh, and they're arguing something about him coming back from Italy, and she's finally just like, forget it, stay in Italy if you want to. Some kind of husband you're proving to be. This is not all in my head. You know what? Don't even worry about it. And then she hangs up on him.
Ooh.
Yikes. But at this point, we can choose to go in and talk to Linda. Do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So when you knock on her door, you can go straight into her room. And inside of the room, everything is covered in sheets. Like, there's tons of furniture in here. It's actually quite a large room, but you can't see any of the furniture because it's all covered in sheets. You can see like some pictures on the wall, but like that's it. And Linda herself is in a canopy bed completely covered by sheets or curtains or whatever. So like we can't even see her, but we can approach her and talk to her. And Nancy introduces herself, and we can ask how she's feeling or something. And she says she feels like something really strange is happening. And it's kind of important to mention that Linda basically just acts really creepy. Like she talks in like this low, slow, well, like she'll switch, right? So she'll seem to be talking normally, and then suddenly she'll get really creepy and start talking in like this low, slow voice. And so she also like often like chuckles darkly, like it's really ominous and really spooky.
And she gets angry easily too. She'll get
angry
real
very
harsh
easily.
real quick.
She asks us what her mother has told us, and she asks if her mother said that she was an unhappy bride who just needed to adjust and that the condition is all in her head. And we're like, what condition? Like, what's going on? How are you feeling, Linda? And she explains that she's tired all the time, her mouth is dry, her vision's blurry. But then she pauses after she says this, and she's like, but that's not important. What's important is that there are some doors that should never be opened. There are some doors that hold secrets which should never be known. But before we can ask about that, there is a knock on the door, and it's actually Jane asking to come in to meet Nancy because we're in here. But Linda is like really harsh with Jane at this point, and she's like, no, like she's really firm with Jane. And so Jane leaves. And then when Jane leaves, Linda is like, sorry about that. That's Jane. She can be really annoying. So she
Poor
just
Jane.
knocked on the door. Like, geez, Linda. Anyway, Linda tells Nancy that she knows that we as Nancy have an obligation to Linda's mom because Linda's mom is like our neighbor or something, and that's why we came here. But she says, but there's nothing that we can do. So we can stay if we want. We're fully welcome to stay, but she thinks that we should just go home because there's nothing for us to do here. And then she just like will stop talking and won't speak to us anymore, which she does frequently as well. We'll just go start talking to her, and she'll just does not say anything else in return to us. Just totally stop. Which is like, honestly, such a boss move. Like, I wish that I could do that in conversation with someone. Like, if they just started talking about something and I just didn't feel like answering or responding, just not say anything.
Yeah.
Just shut up. It sounds great. So
just pull that curtain a little tighter.
Props to you, Linda. Props to you. But after this conversation, we can go head to the conservatory. And actually on the way, this is when I got the call from Linda's mom, Mrs. Petrov. And she tells Nancy that she's at her wit's end because she's never known Linda to act like this. She said that Linda did see a doctor about her condition or whatever, but the doctor said that there was nothing wrong with her aside from a little dry skin or something. So that's a little frustrating. She tells us that she has no idea why she's hiding behind that curtain. And she actually visited recently, and when she was here, she got so frustrated that Linda was behind the curtain that at one point she just like pushed the curtain aside to see Linda, and Linda looked absolutely fine. So she has no idea why she's doing that. It's really weird. She says that her husband Hugh is also like bewildered by her behavior, and that Nancy is their last hope. Yeah, she explains that Hugh's in Rome right now. Apparently he's a diplomat, which is interesting. I don't know why I always thought he was a lawyer, but he's not. He's a diplomat, which I guess makes sense. And he's also told Mrs. Petrov that it's been really hard to talk to Linda lately because whenever he calls, which he calls every day, Linda tends to just like fly off the handle at like little things that seem like shouldn't anger her, which is apparently extremely out of character for her because she's usually really even-tempered. So, very odd. But I really want to talk about this later because I find this very interesting. Anyway. But at this point, we're like down into the Great Hall, which is just this massive, amazing room, which Kori hates, but I love.
I think it's so ugly. That floor is just absolutely hideous.
Yeah, it's like a black and white checkered floor.
With a maze on top of it.
Yeah, and like these big red columns, and the walls have like green wallpaper on it. It's also like lined with portraits of all of like the main Penvillans and their crests, which we'll come to learn that each Penvillin who has, I guess, been the main descendant. I don't know what you call it. It's not like title initiate. Well, yeah, maybe whatever.
That's what they call themselves.
But it's not just them though, because
every other every Penvillin in this line has one, not just every other person.
Not every Penvillin, but every who is like the owner, who the inheritor, the line of inheritance. I don't know.
I don't know.
Do you see
I
what
thought
I'm
it was
saying?
just family lineage. Yeah, I don't know.
But like, I feel like that's too broad because I'm talking about not just the general family lineage. Talking about the ownership of Blackmoor Manor. Whatever. Anyway.
I don't know if there's a specific word for that. Oh, you were just talking about the Great Hall and the portraits.
Yeah, no, so the hall is lined in portraits of Penvillins, and each of the portraits has an associated family crest under it, and we'll learn that each person in the line who has a portrait also makes up their own crest. So the Penvillin family doesn't have one specific Penvillin family crest, which is typically how it would be. There's a bajillion.
Yeah.
And those will be really important later. So
yeah. It's a little absurd, in my opinion. This family's really obsessed with themselves.
They are very obsessed with themselves.
So I'm also salty we never get to solve that maze puzzle. Like, you put this giant puzzle on the floor that we never touch.
Yeah, it feels like that might be like something they cut out of the game or something.
Maybe. Yeah, I just don't see why it's there if we don't ever get to do the maze, you know? First time playing it, I was like, oh, this is going to be a puzzle later. And then it just never is.
Yeah.
So.
But so off the Great Hall is the conservatory. And here is where we can speak to Mrs. Drake. And this room is also massive. Pretty much every room in the manor is massive, aside from the bedrooms. But this is like a 2-story conservatory. It's all glassed in. And there are like these exotic plants everywhere, which actually there's an award standing in the conservatory as well. And when you click on it, Nancy will say that all of these plants must be hybrids that John Penvillin made, because he's the one who won an award for plant hybridizing, whatever you say, however you call that. And there's also this massive carnivorous plant in here that if you click it too many times will eat Nancy, and you have to get a second chance, which is hilarious. And I really just recommend doing it just for the lulz. Yes. Because it's so funny. And Mrs. Drake is down here back in the corner, and so we can talk with her now. And like you were saying, we quickly learn that she is quite strict. She insists that we act respectfully and civilly while we're here. And she, yes, obviously does not have a high opinion of Americans. She says that he was away, and so she is in charge, and she hates noise, and so basically tells us to not make noise. And she does tell us that Jane is really interested in us being here and really wants to meet us, but we need to make sure to not distract her from her lessons. Which is fair, I guess.
Mhm.
But where does Mrs. Drake get off saying that she's in charge here? Also, what do you mean in charge? This is just like a house. It's not like
Right.
we're not aboard some like military ship, lady. Like, chill the fuck out.
She thinks that this is like a royal household.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This all rubs me the wrong way. Yeah,
It does.
I don't know.
What was the thing? Oh, yeah. So she also tells us that the manor house doesn't have any permanent staff, which is
We need
insane.
to talk about this. Yeah.
Impossible. You don't even have a gardener. Unreal.
First of all, we'll learn later that the Bostonies have always been staff of the Penvillans. So Ethel, like, she is on staff, first of all.
Yeah.
And she lives here. So technically, yes. But her wording, I wrote this down. She implies that the staff are inherently ne'er-do-wells.
Oh, yeah.
She says that specifically, ne'er-do-wells. They can't having ne'er-do-wells running around the manor. And she's super proud about how they've always been, quote-unquote, self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I don't know. She just implies that, like, oh, if we were to have a staff, they would, like, steal from us or something because we're, like, so important. And she's just very hoity-toity. I don't like a single character in this game. I'm sorry. I've got some empathy for Jane, but beyond that, I hate everyone.
Yeah, no, I think I like Ethel, but we can talk about that later.
Okay.
But no, she's very hoity-toity, and it's bizarre because it's like 2005 at this point, and I know she's supposed to be older, so it's supposed to be kind of like this holdover from like an earlier time or whatever. But what earlier time? This woman was probably born in what, the 1930s, maybe? Like, it just doesn't seem like she would have grown up in like this upstairs downstairs kind of culture, which is what they're kind of trying to like lean into, which was like maybe early 1900s, you know?
Yeah. I don't believe you that the Penvillans never had a staff.
No.
Like, I don't believe you.
There is no way. There is no way. And I know that part of that is also supposed to be kind of about like the Penvillans' history of secrecy or whatever. Like, you know, they're very private and there's all these rumors and stuff, and they kind of like lean into that kind of mystique. But there is absolutely no way. This place is gigantic. You could not maintain it if you didn't have staff. But yeah, so she's interesting. But yeah, she'll tell us, you know, they don't have any quote unquote permanent staff at the manor, but they do have or Nigel Mukherjee is here, and he's just in the library researching the Penvillans because he's going to be writing a book or something. And also Ethel Bostony is also staying here, and she's Jane's tutor. She also will talk to us a little bit about Linda, and she tells us that she thinks that she just needs some time to adjust to her new living situation, and that basically what's going on with her is just nerves, I guess, about moving and being married now, which, okay. She also tells us that we have the run of the house, but we just need to not break anything. And also she'll tell us that their kitchen is currently being remodeled. So they have an arrangement with a local pub to deliver all their meals. And so we can call them from our room and order whatever we want from them anytime we want. Well, whenever they're open, which is a pretty sweet deal. When we bring up what we saw outside, she tells us that it was just our imagination, and she tells us to not get any ideas about going outside and looking for it because we'll just track mud all over the house. So this is where we learn that we're effectively trapped in the manor and we cannot go outside at all, which I will say, I understand why they do this, and there's certainly enough content in this game to where you do not need to go outside, but I do kind of wish we could go outside on the moors a little bit. I feel like they lost an opportunity to really give us some more of that spooky ambiance by doing that. And it wouldn't have to be anything extreme, but just like maybe one or two paths where you have to like follow tracks or something and you find one clue or something. It doesn't even
Yeah.
have to be a puzzle, but just something small like that, you know?
Let us at least go investigate the eyes we saw at the beginning. Like
Right.
tomorrow morning, we'll go out and look through that hedge, and maybe we
Mhm.
don't find anything, but at least we
Yeah.
can go look into that, you know?
Right. Yeah. But, oh, well.
Or maybe we find the red goggles out there or something.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
But we can explore the rest of the house at this point. So back in the Great Hall is a hallway like behind the stairs, which leads to other rooms of the house that we can't explore, including the kitchen, but presumably also other rooms. I was thinking about you at this point though, because I was like, where is like the dining room? Where is like, this is a massive place. There's only one door and presumably it's the kitchen. Where's the rest of it?
Like 4 bedrooms. There's Mrs. Drake's bedroom that we can't go into, Linda's, Jane's, and then ours. Where Nigel and Ethel sleeping because they live here.
Yeah, it just seems like it could be so easily. We just need a few more doors to make this make a little bit more sense.
Right.
We just don't get it, but whatever. I was just thinking about you because of your comments that you've made to me before about how the floor plans of all the locations never make sense.
Yeah. Thornton Hall's the worst, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Thornton Hall goes off in angles of hallways that, like, the outside there's no, like, there shouldn't be a wing at that angle, you know, because Thornton Hall is very square shaped. But then if you go upstairs, you're like going down hallways that are like 45-degree angles, and it's like, this doesn't match.
Make sense. Yeah.
You could probably make it work, but like it wouldn't look like this. The windows wouldn't be where they are. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point. But down there in that hallway, there is a cricket trophy given in honor of Brigitte Penvelin, who apparently sponsored a cricket club in 1751. There is a door to the kitchen that I was talking about, and on it says, "Please stay out of the kitchen until the fire damage is repaired." What happened in the kitchen? To talk about that later, yeah. And then in the Great Hall is also a card game, which is essentially animatronic Go Fish. And we play as Penny and the machine is Betty. I want to talk about this too. Obviously, Penny is Penelope Penvelin, but who is Betty?
I don't know.
I feel like there's something there. Anyway.
Yeah.
We can explore off of the Great Hall. The other side is the library, which is another massive space with these dark stone walls and a second floor full of bookshelves, which we cannot access, sadly.
Another thing, how do you get up there? There's no staircase that would lead you to that area.
No, there's not. And we can meet Nigel Mukherjee in here, and he is typing away on his computer. Nigel is a slightly pretentious British historian. He's pretty stereotypical. He literally wears a tweed suit, which is hilarious, but he's cute. I kind of like Nigel. He is really annoying, but I think he's a funny character. You know?
I could have used more of him. I feel like there's a plot line that got taken out with him or something that we miss at the end.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. And he'll indeed tell us about how he's there researching the Penvelins, and he says that they have a scandalous history and that there is a rumor that the Penvelins are protectors of some kind of secret or treasure. And he'll also tell us about Eleanor Penvelin, who was tried and convicted of witchcraft in 1650 at the height of the witch trials in Essex. And actually, it was rumored that Cromwell himself arranged the conviction, because Eleanor Penvelin was actually really vocal against his policies at the time, which is interesting. And people who visited the manor at the time when Eleanor lived in it reported hearing ghostly bells and seeing phantom hands floating about the manor.
Nigel's a little snooty as well about this too, because Nancy will ask him some specific questions about Cromwell, and he's like, I guess they don't teach history in America.
Like British history, no, they don't.
Sorry, Nigel. You don't have to be rude. I don't know.
He'll also tell us about the Beast of Blackmoor, and he says that this story has been told since the 1600s, and villagers at that time reported seeing a strange beast with red eyes wandering the moors, and they actually asked Eleanor Penvelin to put a bounty on the head of the beast, but she refused, and this sparked rumors that the beast was actually her husband, who was cursed by Eleanor for finding out too much about the Penvelin secret. And then Nigel will also tell us random facts about other Penvillans when we click around on different things in the library. Which also in the library is this large sculpture of the god Mercury holding a scepter. There's also a desktop computer that seems to have belonged to Alan Penvillan. And Nigel says that he was a noted researcher in computers and languages and that he doesn't have the password for it, but Jane let him onto the computer one time, so he knows that it's working. But he tells us that we're welcome to use his computer, though, if he's not here. So that's great. It is, yes, such a lovely invitation to snoop on his computer because you can return to the library anytime after Nigel leaves for the night and read through all the things on his laptop. And there's an email from someone named Ludmilla who says that Nigel will have a bestseller if he can deliver the goods or goodies, she should say.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a little bit of a hint that Nigel may not be trying to write such a glowing book about the Penvillans as the Penvillans may have been led to believe. There's also notes and an outline for his book, and the notes contain just a ton of information on the Penvillans, which gives context and some clues for future puzzles as well. Most notably, the notes mention secret passageways in the manor, though they also talk about the columns in the Great Hall and how the wand from the statue in here can be released somehow. And also, when you look at the columns in the Great Hall, you kind of get this information from the notes, but like there are pieces that are missing from each of them, and so that'll be relevant later. You want to take it?
Sure. So next we're going to go back upstairs, and in the hallway we can hear some spooky noises coming from this covered thing in the corner. There's like a sheet over this thing, and if we take the sheet off, it turns out it's a bird cage, and we get to meet Lulu, who is the family parrot. She is extremely intelligent and has been she's been around for quite a long time now. Mrs. Drake says that I think it was like her father's bird or something like that, he brought back from the Amazon, and Lulu has been living here ever since. And she, like I said, she's very intelligent. She can give us hints throughout the game, and she also speaks Latin, so that's going to be useful for later. Also, Lulu has a very delicate constitution because she is so old. It's very important that her diet be very specific and healthy for parrots. This is going to be relevant later because Jane, in her room, she has an easy bake oven where you can make little cakes for Lulu. But if you put like wrong ingredients in the cake, it can kill Lulu. So we have to be very careful about what we make for her. And if you give her a cake, she will give you a hint.
Yeah.
Also in the upstairs hallway, there is an alcove with this spiral staircase that doesn't go anywhere, but when you step on the stairs, they make musical sounds. And at the top of the stairs, there's like this panel with all these levers. And if you pull the levers in the order of like the musical sounds going up the stairs, it will solve a puzzle for you and you will get a key. If we go back into Nancy's room at this point, we can order food from the Boar's Head pub. And the guy that works at the pub, his name is Tommy, and he actually speaks in Cockney rhyming slang, which is something that we get to learn a little bit more about in the game here. Some more edutainment for you. Basically, we have to try to decipher what he says because he will not tell us the real names of these foods. It's like, would you like the loop-de-loop or the dog's eye? And that means like a pot pie or soup, you know? So it's kind of fun that there's all these Cockney rhyming slang things in the game that we just kind of have to process of elimination and figure out what it means.
Also, you can just order it all, which I always do.
Yes, of course. Yes, you got to get all the food. You can also ask for some Uncle Fred and Johnny Rudder, which is bread and butter, which obviously you have to get that as well. But then we can also call Hugh from the phone in our room. And whenever we speak to him, he tells us that Linda has had some terrible temper tantrums and she gets completely irrational and it makes it impossible to talk to her because he'll say something totally innocuous and she will get mad for no reason. And basically, this is exactly what Linda's mom has already told us.
This pisses me off so badly, Kori. I hate Hugh. Hugh is horrible.
Hugh's terrible.
He says like, she has these temper tantrums that make rational discourse impossible. It's like such a
It's very pretentious.
Well, but it's like feels like such a gaslighty guy thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're being crazy right now. I can't talk to you. Why are you getting angry about nothing? Like, I didn't say anything wrong. Like, just I hate it. And like, I know that it's supposed to be like legitimate. Like this is probably true about Linda's behavior or whatever. But the way that it's phrased, it just makes me hate him so much.
Also, the weird jealousy over Jane for Hugh. Also, okay, so before we say that, he does mention something very important here, and that is what is called the 6-month habitation clause.
We have to talk about this later.
Penvillains, they are so full of themselves. Okay, so apparently, according to the Penvillan inheritance rules, the spouse of the current owner of the manor must reside in the home for at least 6 months after the wedding, like 6 consecutive months. Otherwise, their half of the estate would immediately pass to the next legal heir.
I think so. I don't think it's just her half of the estate. I think it is both Hugh's and Linda's half of the estate.
Oh, I assumed Hugh was the full owner.
I don't know, because I swear there is something they said later where it said Hugh's and Linda's portion of the estate would go straight to Mrs. Drake, which is
Mrs.
interesting.
Drake also has the letter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because that makes me really confused about what this 6 months habitation clause is for. So we'll have to talk about that later. And also I'm going to look that up because I could have sworn. So, because originally I think that obviously it's just Linda's portion would go to Mrs. Drake, or go to the next, heir, which is Mrs. Drake. But I don't think that's actually what it was. So
these rules are very strange, and looks like something is going to happen if Linda does not stay. And so maybe Linda wants to leave the manor, and that's where we're kind of at in this issue. But yeah, so it also could point to Mrs. Drake having some interest in getting Linda out of here, because Mrs. Drake would definitely profit off of this. Hugh also tells us this grown man is so jealous of his 12-year-old daughter. He tells us about his father, Alan, the one whose computer is down in the library. His father apparently doted on Jane so much that it made Hugh jealous, and he passed away when she was really, really young, so she really doesn't even remember her grandfather or remember anything about him. But Hugh found it so out of character that his dad would dote on his granddaughter that he thought it was strange and mystifying. Also, we learned that that Hugh and his ex-wife Renee divorced about 2 years ago, and it sent Jane into a little bit of a tailspin. And she's just been having a hard time with the divorce
she's
overall.
12. Why wouldn't
she's 12. Also, the timeline for me here doesn't add up.
Yeah.
As well. I think, first of all, are we the same age as Jane?
Wait, what? You mean Nancy?
No, us.
Oh, us as a player? Yeah.
Because, this never occurred to me when we were playing, but like.
You always thought she was younger.
You always think that she's just this little kid.
Because she acts that way.
Yeah, but we were also these little kids. And in her room later, when we find the family tree, she is not on it yet. It only goes down to Alan, who's her grandfather. And so it says that he died in 93. But she says
she died when she was a baby.
That she was like a year or two when he died.
Really little.
So was she born in 93? Because we were born in 93.
So this came out in 2004. So if she was 12, then she was born in 1992. So we were like 11.
Okay.
And she was a year older.
So she's a year older than us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why she felt like such a young character.
Yeah. Well, no,
anyway.
it's because she's a little bit infantilized. She kind of, we can talk about that later too, but it's her high voice, her high squeaky voice. Because I do think it's an adult that voices her.
It is. Yeah.
And so that's probably just part of the voice actor having to sound that way in order to sound young, but it sounds a little bit too young. But like, how would you do that? And so, and also part of her the way that she acts around Nancy and that like always wanting to like play games, she just seems really immature in contrast to Nancy. So I think some of it is just like situational, you know. But yeah. I do also think there's a little bit of a purpose to it as well, which we can talk about.
Yeah.
Which we can talk about later.
But okay, so Alan died in 92 or 93-ish and doted on Jane for that very short amount of time, and Jane doesn't remember. But anyway, so after this, we get to go talk to Jane in her room for the first time. And she is very talkative and energetic, very excitable, but ultimately very lonely, clearly, because she's in this big house. She's homeschooled. It doesn't seem like she really ever gets to be around anybody but family members and her tutor, certainly never around any other like children her own age. So it's very sad. And so because she's so lonely, she is constantly trying to corral Nancy into playing games with her all the time. Also, I love her outfit, little Wednesday Addams moment. She's just in this little like Peter Pan collar dress with the black button down. Yeah,
I know that the Penvillans are very formal, and so that's probably why she dresses like that. But if I were homeschooled and I was 12 and I never left this, you would not get me out of pajamas.
Never.
I mean, that's my life now. Yeah. I don't get out of pajamas. And so thinking about having to get up every morning, and I'm sure it's like Ethel or something who enforces this, but like putting on like a skirt and like a blazer, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, send me to boarding school, because I bet I could I could have a little bit more of a loose dress code there.
Poor Jane.
Yeah.
But she wants us to play these board games with her, and it's really sad, actually. She has this hope chest in her room, and she's like, oh, yeah, Auntie Mrs. Letitia is her name. Aunt Letitia, she said that it's a hope chest, so I put all my board games in there in the hopes that someone will play with me. It's like, oh, so sad.
I know.
Jane.
It's really sad.
Yeah. She also refers to Linda as her mommy, but then corrects herself and calls her Linda and says something to the effect of like, Linda doesn't want her calling her mummy or something like that.
Well, she doesn't even say that. She just says, Mummy, I mean Linda.
Oh, no, Linda says it later.
Oh, I didn't
Linda
get that.
says something to Jane of like, I'm not your mummy or something like that. Or there's something like that. But anyway, we talked to Jane about Linda, and she starts saying that she got sick after a lady in black left something on her nightstand, on Linda's nightstand. Jane says that she was playing in her room when Linda wasn't there. So she was playing in Linda's room when Linda wasn't there. And she saw this woman came in, and she couldn't see her face because she was wearing this like long cloak with the hood over it. And Jane says that she couldn't see who she was, but she looked like that Lady Eleanor from the Great Hall. Creepy. We also ask her about the Beast of Blackmoor, and Jane says that she has heard this weird howling outside in the past, but that it sounds strangely human. Oh, also, we will learn that the room that Nancy's currently staying in is Brigitte's old room. So that's going to be relevant to some later puzzles that we'll need to know that is Brigitte's stuff in order to solve Brigitte's puzzles. We can also explore Jane's room a little bit if she's not currently in her lessons. There's a bunch of stuff in here, actually, that helps us learn a little bit more about the Penvillans. So first is on her window seat, there is a copy of the Penvillan family tree, which is, I think you said, like 23 generations long?
Yeah.
And it's super, super big. But if we click on any of the names on there, Jane will be able to tell us about this person and like what year they were born, when they died, what was going on in their life, all this kind of stuff. So clearly, Ethel has been coaching Jane pretty hard on her own family history for her to know all this stuff. There's also a book on monsters on her shelf. Inside is this article about werewolves by Palihi Vadas at the University of Manhattan. She's this researcher. And she says that people suffering from lycanthropy, which is the process of transforming into a werewolf, these people will experience weak visions, dry mouth, constant thirst, hair growth on like their face and their hands and stuff like that. People will also become very like short-tempered, very aggressive. That's very strange, because all of those are the complaints that Linda has been having recently.
Interesting.
And there's also a phone number where we can call this doctor, so we're going to call her later. Like I said, Jane has the Easy Bake Oven in her room, and we can also make little cakes there. Um, Oh, this is where
Yeah.
if we click on the oven, Jane will tell us a little bit more about the kitchen incident. Apparently, she was trying to do this experiment that Ethel had inspired her to do, like a science experiment in the kitchen, something to do with snickerdoodles, and it ended up causing an explosion. So that is why we are not able to get into the kitchen currently. There's also a very interesting tapestry in this room. We'll learn from Nigel's notes that this poem, I guess, was made by Charles Penvillin, and the words in the poem correspond to images on the door frame outside of Jane's door. So this is a puzzle later. Essentially, we'll have to put the images on the outside of the door in the order that they appear in the poem. We'll also see Jane's tutoring schedule on her desk, and like we said, it's super intense. She studies from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., and she's learning all sorts of topics: French, Latin, science, math, English, art, all the normal stuff, but then also a very good chunk of Penvillin history is taking up her time in her schedule. So,
Interesting.
I don't know that the Queen of England herself was this obsessed with her own family genealogy and everything. It's
Probably,
a lot.
but
Well, I know that the queen had to have. I know that she grew up taking lessons on her own family history and everything. But short of literally being the Queen of England, I don't understand why you'd have to do all this.
You really have to be obsessed with your family.
It's a little exhausting how obsessed the Penvillins are with themselves. Even knowing what the treasure is and why they're so obsessed with themselves, I still think that it's ultimately very absurd, and I don't like it. But. Also on Jane's dressing table is a book called The Mutus Liber, which Nancy will note that this is a pictures only book. There's not a single word in this book, but it's filled with a lot of alchemical symbols and stuff. So this is going to be very relevant later. Jane tells us that Ethel gave it to her, but it's weird because she doesn't really know what it's about. But yes, we will need that for puzzling later, so we will definitely be coming back to that. And when we go to leave Jane's room for the first time, we get perhaps the scariest jump scare in all of Nancy Drew history.
I know.
And this can happen in a few different places as well. Like Ethel, I think
3 times.
At least 3 times for you. She only got me twice in my playthrough this time. But there is a place that I have run into her in past playthroughs that I didn't run into her this time. So it can be 3 jump scares if you play right. But Ethel will just appear in front of you in the doorway. And I don't know why it gets me so bad every time. But
I know when it's going to happen. I know ahead of time. I play this game enough times. I know when all the jump scares happen. It still scares me every time. It's very effective.
And there's nothing scary about Ethel. It's not like she's trying to jump out at you. It's not like she's, wearing a scary disguise or anything like that. No, she just appears in front of the door. But it's just oh my gosh. Oh, where did you come from? Okay. And I'll also note it's very strange to me that Ethel is never in a permanent location. Like pretty much every other game character in every other game, you can only run into her, or you can only talk to her when you have these jump scares and when you randomly run into her around the palace manor.
Which is insane because I feel like Ethel is the most interesting character and I want to ask her so many questions, but you just can't do it. You're just not allowed to do it.
Yeah.
Which is annoying.
She almost doesn't even feel like a suspect because you can't go interrogate her about all these things I want to ask her about. But basically, we just introduce ourselves to her here, and then she makes some excuse about going into Jane's room to talk to her about something. And so then we leave. So depending on your playthrough at this point, you can choose to go to sleep. And when I was playing through, somehow I ended up getting multiple nightmare cutscenes all in a row right here. It's not supposed to happen that way, but you definitely can get one of your cutscenes here. There's a few of them that can happen. One is that Nancy will wake up to chanting around 3:15 a.m. There's some creepy laughing in the hallway that doesn't... Maybe is the bird, but it doesn't really sound like it's Lulu. Nobody else is around though. One will sound like there's clawing at your door and somebody's rattling the doorknob trying to get in. But you open the door and there's nothing there, but then there are scratch marks on the frame of your door, which is really creepy. One is that you will have a nightmare about the Penvillins that it's just Nancy's looking up at the ceiling, or I guess at the top of the canopy bed that she's in, and it's just flashes of the paintings from the Great Hall. but then they're all twisted and weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of different nightmares that you can get right here. So you can get a few of them. But then if Nancy wakes up for a particular one, she'll go down the hallway to try to like look into the sounds that she's heard. And in doing so, you will see a lady in black just like walking away from you, scurrying down the hallway really quickly. And Nancy will try to follow her, but by the time you get around the corner, she's gone. Also, she'll leave behind some goggles that like have some like red bulbs in the eyes. So clearly this is how someone faked the eyes out front.
We have
at
to
the
talk
beginning.
about this later too.
Yeah.
Because I think this might be a plot hole, but maybe not. But
Oh, definitely it is. Unless it's a dream somehow.
right. Presumably you keep the
You do keep the goggles.
So
Yeah.
we can talk about this.
Maybe she hallucinates the woman, but then the goggles are actually
Maybe.
just on the ground when
Maybe
she walks
that's
around
it.
the corner.
We can talk about it.
But now we're going to follow up on some of the things that Jane has told us already. Do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So if we talk to Linda about the lady in black that Jane saw, Linda will say that Jane never told her about that. She's never said anything about any lady in black to her. So we ask if she got a note that upset her, and she said she did receive something, but that it's none of our concern. And then she gets very firm and she won't speak to us anymore. And of course, that happens frequently, even if we're just trying to make small talk. So it's not really surprising. If you've interacted with a computer in the library, Jane can also give us the password to it. So we can enter that, and a voice, which is Alan's voice probably, will tell us that there are 13 shy ghosts living in the manor, and that if we come downstairs after midnight and find all 13, he'll give us a prize. And when you do that, the computer tells you about a surprise when you pull on something below a vase and by a green dragon. But at this point in my playthrough, I hadn't found that room, or I hadn't gotten to that room yet. So we can learn more about that later. There's also a couple puzzles we can solve in our room now that we know it's Brigitte's room. There's a cube-shaped box thing that has animals associated with the zodiac on the outside of it, and by opening each side and changing the moon shape to the right phase and color based on Brigitte's coat of arms, it opens and we get a telescope lens. And there's also an empty telescope stand in our bedroom. And so we assume that there's like a missing telescope that's supposed to go there and connect to the telescope lens that we got. And if we ask Jane about it, she tells us that she borrowed it and will give it back to us if we play a game with her. We can also call Paliki Vadas from the book to follow up about her werewolf article. Basically, we ask her if she believes that Linda could be really turning into some kind of creature. And she says, like, she doesn't say yes or no, but she explains that the human mind is very capable of making people exhibit symptoms of lycanthropy if motivated, basically by the power of stress and suggestion. She says that, like, there are like these stressful events that could make people essentially susceptible to suggestion. Some of them being like moving and getting married and like a change in your like living situation. And apparently somehow when these people are stressed, they end up getting it into their head, like seeing or reading something that suggests that they are supposed to go through some kind of metamorphosis. And since they're vulnerable to it, essentially they just do. Their body starts to change and exhibit symptoms. Interesting. Once Jane returns the telescope to our room and puts the lens in it, we can use that to look at the tapestry on the wall of our room. And we see symbols on it. There are hidden symbols on it. And these are the same symbols from the Go Fish game in the Great Hall. Unfortunately, when we try to use the machine at this time, it stops working. So we have to go tell Mrs. Drake that we broke her machine, but she tells us, oh, it's not broken. I just took the crank out because Jane was playing it too much and getting distracted from her work. And so she will go and find the crank for us, but only if we organize her plants into a tray. Jane had taken them all out or something, and she had them fit perfectly into this tray. And so we have to put them all back in as a puzzle.
It's a fun one.
It is. I like that. once we're done with that, Mrs. Drake has not yet returned. And if we have ordered the Pinky and Perky from the pub, which is turkey, we can use that turkey slice to feed the small carnivorous plant on the table, like kind of behind where Mrs. Drake usually stands. And underneath that small carnivorous plant is a letter to or from a family attorney. Looks like Mrs. Drake was asking about the same inheritance clause that Hugh had told us about on the phone. And in the letter, the lawyer said that he's sorry to hear that Linda is not feeling well, but she has to inhabit the estate for at least 3 months. Otherwise, she and Hugh forfeit half the estate to Mrs. Drake. That's where it's from. It's from the letter that says both Linda and Hugh forfeit their half of the estate to Mrs. Drake.
That's such a weird clause.
Isn't it?
Like, what if they don't want to live there for,
Well, and my question is just like, what is exactly the point of it? What's supposed to be, what is that supposed to do, right? Presumably, in my mind, I guess when I used to think about it, I used to think, well, it's to prevent like gold diggers, right? From marrying into the family just to be able to, you know, inherit stuff. And so that way, if they don't live there for 3 months, then they can't just like immediately divorce them and get half of the estate. But it's like, we'll just do a prenup.
Right.
Like every wealthy family does. And it's just such a weird clause. Like, what about the estate is so impactful or relevant that you would need them to live there? And also you would think as the Pendulums themselves, if they're so secret, and there's that rumor that Eleanor cursed her husband because he learned too much about the family secret, why would you want them there?
Right.
Right? If you're trying to be secretive. And if it's not just the case of, Linda forfeiting her half, and it's Linda and Hugh forfeiting their half, then is that supposed to be like to weed out bad Penvillans? Like if they're not good, if they're not good spouses, if their spouse doesn't want to stay with them, then they don't get to inherit? Is that what it's about?
I feel like this is just like weirdly shoehorned in to give Mrs. Drake a motive.
Right.
And it's like, wait, why would Jane not necessarily be Hugh's next of kin? You know? Like, I feel like if you're talking about inheritance, it would go to the person's child, not their paternal aunt, you know? Like, that just seems like I totally get why Mrs. Drake should have a claim to the manor, but it seems like once Hugh had a child, it would naturally fall to her before anybody else.
Well, I guess
right?
it depends on Hugh's will. Like, if Hugh has a will or not, maybe he doesn't have a will. Because he would have to name an inheritor, right?
Right. But why would this supersede any will that Hugh has?
Exactly. That's what I don't understand about it. Is because it seems like there's like there's existing legal structure around the Penvillan estate that is not clear and not explained, because it doesn't make sense. We'll have to talk about this more later, maybe with like the whole generation thing. But like how they manage to keep the line intact in the same way. Like, it is always a parent transferring ownership to a child, always. Right. Which just doesn't seem, even to the point where one Penvillan ends up not having any children, but they adopt someone, and then they are the inheritor. So it's like, how does that, is there some kind of like legal document, estate, like, and how can it be that this manor that has existed from the 1300s or whatever to now, how does a legal document that was written back in the 1300s still apply?
I feel like this would never hold up in court, first of all.
It just seems impossible, because how can you be bound by a legal document that you weren't alive for, that like wasn't written with you in mind?
Right.
You know?
Wasn't even written with the previous owner in mind.
Exactly.
Like, or the previous owner. Like
in order to enter into a contract, like, you have to sign a document. And so I just don't understand how there could be some kind of like legal prescriptive thing about how the manor transfers hands. Because it feels like once it transfers into somebody else's hands, then that person is the owner and they get to decide what they do with it, right?
Right. Hugh is the owner. He owns it now. So if Linda decides to leave the manor, if they get divorced, suddenly he loses ownership of his property?
Or if she doesn't live there for 3 months, he loses ownership.
He loses his own property because of her choice. Or what if he'd never gotten remarried at all? Did
Then
he
I don't
lose
think it
his
applies.
property upon the divorce or something? And so if he never gets married again, he just keeps it forever and there's no risk of him losing it?
I think so. Well, not.
What if he doesn't stay for 6 months? He's on this trip.
It's only about the spouses. The 6 months habitation clause is only about spouses to people who own the manor.
See, this feels like a plot hole. Yeah. Anyway.
So when we get the crank back from Mrs. Drake, we can go crank the machine in the Great Hall and click on the symbols in the order from the tapestry. And then Betty will put like this arrowhead piece on the table, and we have to win a game against her in order to win that piece. This piece turns out to be another one of the pieces that fit into the columns in the Great Hall. And when you put that piece in, the columns opens up, and you see that inside is a piece of pipe that you can kind of rotate. And so basically we can intuit that all of these columns in the Great Hall have pipes in them, and we're going to have to rotate them in a certain direction for some reason at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. At some point when we pass by Jane's room, Nancy will also overhear her and Ethel talking, and they're talking about Penvillains. And Ethel mentions to Jane that Randolph, so the very first Penvillan, believed that the proper qualities skip every generation.
Okay.
What could that mean? What could they be talking about there? Then eventually, when we go back to Linda, she'll speak to us again. And she'll tell us that one day after Hugh left for Rome, she discovered a secret passageway and found an old message etched into a wall. And it seemed like some kind of curse. And she freaked out and went back to her room. And that's when she found the note on the nightstand that Jane was talking about. And she says on this note was written the exact same curse that she read on the wall in the secret passageway. And that is the night when she started to feel strange. And she basically believes that this curse has been coming true ever since she read it. And she's really confused by this because she says no one saw her go into the passageway. And she'd actually been warned not to go poking around the passageways by Ethel, Hugh, and Mrs. Drake because the passageways are old and maybe unstable. And besides, she went directly back to her room after being in the passageway. So how could someone have seen her go in, looked at the message, copied down the message, gotten it back to her room before she did? That doesn't make sense. So she thinks that no human did this. And she also won't tell us what the curse said. She won't repeat it. And she tells us that she burned the note as soon as she read it. And she won't tell us anymore that she has already sealed her own doom and she will not do the same for us. Oh my God, the spooks.
Mm-hmm.
We can also ask her about how she gets along with Jane, and she says that she really tries, but that Jane is basically just weird, and they just don't get along. Which is
I wonder
so
why. You've locked her in this manor, in this bedroom with nobody but her tutor, and you wonder why she's so strange.
To be fair, that's not Linda's fault. It's Hugh's fault. It's Hugh's fault.
Of course, yeah.
But it's she's 12 and so the evidence that she gives towards why Jane is weird is because Jane came into her room one night and asked her to read a book to her. And which also at 12, you're asking your stepmom to read a book to you. That's something else that points to her being way younger. But she did this, and the book that she brought her to read was a monster book. And this weirded Linda out because she's like, what little girl reads monster books like that? Are you serious?
Plenty do, first of all.
I mean, we're playing this game at 12. So,
right.
Yeah. So it's what a weird. So Linda feels super shallow and mean to Jane for no reason.
Poor Jane.
I know.
You're right. This is Hugh's fault for sure.
It's
But
Hugh's
Linda
fault.
shouldn't be like wondering, like, why is she so strange? It's like, no, this poor child doesn't have any chance to be socialized in life or do anything except learn about her weird family's history.
And it's also like, I know that Linda is having like issues right now. Like she's not feeling well, and there's other stuff going on with Linda right now as to why she's acting so mean all the time. But it's like, you're a new stepmom to a 12-year-old like daughter. Like, get it together. Like, figure it out. Like, because this is high stakes. This is a high stakes situation here, and you need to be making a good impression on this girl. Like, you are doing a piss poor job.
Yeah. You're lucky she wants to talk to you at all.
I know.
Like, you know?
I know. Anyway.
And then just to be angry. She wants me to read to her. She wants to play a board game like a family would. Ew. What?
Yeah, anyway. When we talk to Jane next, we can ask her about the secret passageway that Linda mentioned, and she'll tell us where it is if we win another game against her. But she'll tell us that it's in the East Hall. It's the one with the coat of arms on the door. And when we tell her that it's locked and we can't get in there, she'll actually just give us a key to it. And in this room, when we use the key on the door, it's a room full of like a bunch of Asian art and artifacts. It's like a hodgepodge room, but it's actually a really small room that like doesn't go anywhere, which is also kind of odd.
Yeah.
And inside this room is where we can find the vase and the green dragon mentioned at the computer after solving the 13 Ghosts game. And when we pull on the shelf bracket below the vase, a hole appears in the wall, and we can ride down a slide.
This is pretty cool.
It's
I
very
like this
fun.
part of the game. Yeah.
Yeah. There's also a target on the wall, or like as we sliding down the slide, there's like a target on the wall that you can pass that you see. And so we'll have to throw something at that later. But also in that little room that we open with the key, there's this green dragon statue, and we can move its hands around. And if we move them into the correct order based on the coat of arms on the door, a secret wall opens. And this is a secret passageway, but it's too dark. And so we have to get some kind of flashlight. Nobody actually has a flashlight, but Jane has a bunch of glow sticks, and we can get them from her if we play and win a game against her whenever we need a new one.
A flashlight? Flashlight? You Americans are so silly. Don't you know it's a torch?
Oh my God.
Okay, Jane, thank you. You know what we meant.
Yeah. Jane was nice about it.
Yeah, Jane was nice about it, but everybody else
Mrs.
like,
Drake's like, don't you mean torch?
Ew.
You want to take it?
Sure. So once we have our glow stick, we can enter the secret passageway. And when we do, it's really just this staircase that dead ends into this door with a picture of an eye on it. And if we open the panel with the eye on it, we see that there is like this puzzle inside that it allows us to input like a word. And then there's also a picture of a parrot next to that word. So clearly, this is Lulu. So we go talk to Lulu about this, and she wants a magic word in order to like help, or in order to proceed with this. She says she's not telling us anything until we have the magic word. So we go ask Mrs. Drake, and she tells us that her brother and grandfather would love to play this word game with Lulu for hours and hours. And eventually Lulu would get really tired, and she would refuse to continue playing until she was told that she was a very, very clever and beautiful bird. So that's our magic word. We go tell Lulu how clever and beautiful she is. And when we do, she tells us the word that we need to input into the door. And this gets really annoying because you go down there, you put the word in, and it gives you a different thing. And so you have to go back up, ask Lulu about it again. She gives you a different word, and you have to do this like 6 times or something like that. But then eventually on the last word, the door will open. At some point during this back and forth, we get another jump scare from Ethel.
I'm convinced that that's the reason why they have us go back and forth so many times, is so that you get into like this, oh, just gotta go do this thing, and then they jump scare you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because you're not expecting it.
And it works so well.
Yeah.
So well. No matter how much the first one got you, this one will still get you just as much.
Mm-hmm.
And we can choose to tell Ethel the real reason that we're in here. Like, yeah, we're trying to break into the hidden passageway, or just looking around, not doing anything weird. Yep. And we can ask if she thinks that there's a treasure hidden in the manor. She says, no, at least not the kind you're thinking of. Okay, interesting. We also ask her about Jane's Mutus Liber book, and she says, yeah, that is a very fascinating old book left to Jane by her grandfather. Mutus Liber, of course, is Latin for silent book, so I guess it literally just is referring to the fact that it's a picture book. And she also tells us that her ancestor, her family, has historically always been the tutors for the Penvillin family, and she is super honored to be able to continue this tradition. How nice that Ethel's great 23 times grandmother got to choose her career for her, but whatever. Eventually, like I said, going back and forth with Lulu enough times, the door downstairs will unlock, and this will actually lead us down another secret passageway, at the end of which is another panel. Nancy actually says that this is only half the panel because it looks like it's like cut off inside the wall. So actually there's another secret passageway that we'll have to get to later to see the other half. But essentially there's a puzzle on this panel and we have to like flip the things on it around in order so that it's all these triangles. We have to make sure that all the triangles are all pointing the same direction. So of course we have to figure out what to do with this before we can actually solve this and then go and solve the other side of it. At this point, we're going to go back and tell Linda, hey, we found your secret passageway, but there was no curse in there. Nothing with, like, words on it, no symbols. We don't know what you're talking about, basically. And she was like, yeah, I don't really know. There was this stupid gargoyle, and it freaked me out, so I was trying to, like, turn it so I didn't have to look at it, so that it was, like, facing the wall or whatever. And when I did that, that's when the secret passageway opened. And we're like, hold on. No. Our secret passageway was just the one behind the locked door on the east side. So where did you go? Wait, there's more than one.
Mm-hmm.
More than one passageway. Wonderful. So we tell her, hey, maybe somebody's trying to scare you off because you're getting too close to whatever is hidden in these secret passageways. And she says, oh yeah, no, I did get too close to something. The witch. The witch of Blackmoor. And of course, she's talking about Eleanor Penvillin here, and she says that Eleanor has probably cursed us too now. Very spooky. So the gargoyle that she's referring to is actually one that's in the hallway directly outside of her bedroom door. And we can move it around, but we don't know exactly how to move it around, what order to turn it in order to get the secret passageway to open. Luckily, there is a painting in the Great Hall with a man and a picture of a gargoyle behind him, so maybe that is a clue. Also, below the picture is where his coat of arms should be, but it's missing. So if we go talk to Nigel about it, he will tell us that this is Corbin Penvillin, who is Eleanor the Witch's grandson. So I think after Eleanor was like shunned from Blackmoor Manor or whatever, the family moved to France, and then Corbin is the one who moved back into Blackmoor Manor.
Correct. Or no, actually, I don't know if it was him, because I want to say he was raised in France, and I want to say he'd never actually, quote unquote, set foot in the manor, they think. But was it him, or was it, I'm going to have to look at the family tree again, because now I'm confused.
I thought it was Eleanor's son who did never set foot in Blackmoor, but then his grandson, or her grandson, came back.
No, so from Nigel's notes, it says that Eleanor's son Edward was raised by the sister of Lecomte de Roquefort in France, and he and son Corbin probably never set foot in Blackmoor Manor. And it was Corbin's son who officially came back. Officially.
So how did Corbin do this puzzle then?
Well, he did come back. He just didn't officially. They didn't officially say, yeah.
Okay.
Because it wouldn't have been socially acceptable, like, for them to be here because their family was still kind of
interesting,
blacklisted, essentially, you know?
So what was going on in that time? Was the manor just sitting empty?
It was sitting empty, except whenever people would get too close to it, someone would come out and, like, warn them off, and we don't learn, but it's mentioned, I think, somewhere in someone's notes that this was a Bossany who was, like, guarding the manor.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. But anyway, so if we go talk to Nigel, he is able to track down the coat of arms for us, but not until we take this typing quiz on his computer. Basically, it's a typing speed thing, and you just have to see how fast you can type. And if we get a high enough word per minute score, then he'll have Nancy type up his memoirs. And this isn't actually something that we actually have to do. Nancy will just like do it for us. And
Thank God.
it's kind of funny because the memoirs like reference past games and stuff, which is kind of cute.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
It's very subtle, but I think that there's something about like going to Phoenix or something.
Oh.
And I can't remember any other specifics, but there are some very subtle references to other games in his memoirs.
Cute.
But by the time we finish typing up his memoirs, it's super late in the evening and Nigel has already gone, but he did leave us on the desk is the copy of the coat of arms, so we can take that. At this point, we go to leave the library and we go into the Great Hall, and it's super weird because the lights are off in here.
They're never off, even in the middle of the night.
Even in the middle of the night when we can go walk around, except right now the lights are off in here. So it's really, really dark. And we're kind of like behind one of the columns, so they can't see us, but we can see that Ethel and Jane are walking slowly towards the center of the room, and they're holding a candle and some kind of jug, and they both have these really ornate headpieces.
Oh yes,
on
I forgot about the headpieces
that have like gold and rubies, I guess, in them. It's very interesting, very ritualistic, everything that they're doing here. And they're chanting, and they're kind of slowly marching towards the center of the room, and they're saying, "No key without toil, no fire without oil."
No key without toil, no fire without oil, no key without toil.
Over and over again. And when they finally get to the center of the room, again, there's that big maze thing in the center of the room, but then in the middle of the maze is just this hole in the floor that anybody could trip on and break their ankle in, by the way. But when Jane gets to the center of the room, she says, "My actions ensure that my name will endure till the end. Penvelen." And as she's saying Penvelen, yes, she whispers it, she pours something from her jug into this hole in the floor, and then they just walk away.
I love this.
And then as they're walking away, Nancy's still hiding so that they don't see her, but Jane is like, "Didn't I do so great, Ethel? Wasn't that great this time? I practiced." And Ethel's like, "Yeah, it was great, but you have to keep this a secret. Remember, no one can know what we just did."
Oh my God.
And then the lights just come back on.
Yeah. What?
Oh my gosh, what? So Nancy goes over to the hole in the ground and she smells it, obviously, and she's like, "Oh,
She
smells like
it,
oil."
obviously.
What the heck are we doing pouring oil into a hole in the floor?
Wild. Also, I just love this. Like the whole chanting, middle of the night rituals. My actions ensure that my name will endure till the end. Penvelen. Like I can't describe to you how much I love that.
It's very gothic.
Oh, anyway, sorry.
It's a lot. Oh, man. But at this point, we can use the coat of arms to go figure out how to use the gargoyle to open the secret passageway. So there is a specific rotation order in which we have to turn the gargoyle, but eventually it does open up the passageway. And so now we're in a passage on the other side of the manor. And in this passageway, we see a peephole. And if we look at the peephole, we realize we're looking directly into Linda's room. And we can't like see anything except we're like right in front of her nightstand. So we can't see Linda, but we can see that she has like a little handheld mirror and a bottle of lotion on her table. And we do see Linda's hand just reach out, and it's super hairy and her nails are all long and sharp. And she grabs the hand mirror and she like, takes it away. So clearly she's looking at herself, and then she puts it down and starts to cry. And then I think she takes some lotion and just starts like rubbing herself in lotion again. And so what? She's turning into a werewolf?
She's a werewolf. She's a literal werewolf. She's hairy hands and claws and crying when she looks at herself in the mirror. She's a werewolf.
Yeah.
Cool? Everybody cool with that? Yep. Okay, also, I'm sorry, time out. So, who built this peephole into this room? And why is it going into, like, the main bedroom of this manor? What the heck? What kind of freaks were the pen villains. Like, you cannot change my mind. Who built it? Who built it to peep on who? Like,
that's interesting.
Anyway.
Okay. So Linda's a werewolf, and clearly that's why she's not allowing anyone to see her right now. So we're going to go start exploring the passageway a little bit more, but then our glow stick starts to go out, so we have to go back to Jane, play another game with her, and then get another glow stick from her before we can go back and explore. But at this point, we can go back to that slide that's in the other secret passageway in the other hallway. And if we take that cricket ball from downstairs in the trophy case, we can go and hit the bullseye with that ball. And if we do that successfully, we win another prize. Which prize is it?
It's the lightning bolt, I think. It's a column piece. I don't remember which one.
Yeah, it's another piece that fits into one of the columns.
Yeah.
But as we're like turning around to pick up this little piece that falls out of this game, I guess, that we've just won, Ethel jump scares us again. Oh, this one always gets me so bad. But clearly she's seen us come down the slide and she kind of knows that we've been doing something we shouldn't be.
Right.
And she says that we shouldn't be going around in the passageways because the passageways only lead to misfortune for the uninitiated.
What the heck? Ethel?
Initiation, is that related to these secret oil rituals that you've been doing in the middle of the night? And she says, she tells us that she knows that we mean well and that we want to help Linda, but Ethel has her own duties, and if we try to interfere with that, it's not going to be pretty for us. Also, the instant that she receives the word, we'll no longer be welcome in Blackmoor.
Oh, yikes. I love Ethel. I love her so much. Of course. She's such a badass. Like, she's such a badass. You can't convince me otherwise. Anyway.
She does not care.
No.
I just wish we got more of her. Yes. That's all the conversations we're going to get with her. We never see or speak to her again.
Which is just wild. It's just wild. We have to talk about this later. Anyway.
Yeah. I feel like there was a good opportunity to put a lot more history into Ethel's side of things. But I guess she has motivation for not talking to us, so it makes sense.
True.
But of course, this warning does not mean anything to Nancy. So if we go back and talk to Hugh at this point, we'll actually learn that Mrs. Drake is the one who hired Ethel. And Mrs. Drake was super insistent because the Bostonese have tutored the Penvillans for generations. And that's what Alan, Hugh's father, would have wanted. He does say that he thinks that her lessons are strange because Ethel is like super demanding about Jane studying the obscure Penvillan history that he doesn't think is super important and also not something that he himself ever had to learn as a child. So he thinks that it's just like a lot. We can also ask him about Nigel in the library, and he says that he's super quiet and doesn't really ever leave the library, but apparently whoever recommended him said that he promised to only cast the Penvillans in a super positive light. And he also mentions that there was supposed to be like a contract putting that in writing that he and Nigel were supposed to sign, but Nigel just started this research and Hugh has never seen this contract. So kind of interesting.
I find this really weird though, because like how exactly would one write a contract saying like, oh, I'm only going to write good things about you in my book? That doesn't make any sense. What terms are you using in that contract to define what is like putting someone in a positive light or not?
Right.
Like, are you just saying that you're not going to write slander? You wouldn't need to write a contract about that because somebody could just sue you for slandering them. And so it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I don't understand what kind of contract that would be to be able to sign. It doesn't make sense. But anyway.
Also, specifically, what are these negative things that he can't say? Because it's like, oh yeah, you had an ancestor that was accused of witchcraft. Are the Penvillans going to take issue with that just because it's factual?
Yeah.
But it may not cast them in the best light if their opinion is that, Eleanor was up to something.
Right.
Or, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very strange. We can also go talk to Jane and ask her about that weird little thing that we saw last night. But she denies it. She says that she doesn't know what we're talking about. She's like, that's so funny. Like, imagine Ethel and I running around in the middle of the night doing weird rituals. And Nancy's like, hold on. I didn't say anything about it being in the middle of the night. And she's like, oh, well, I mean, that's when
when all
rituals take
rituals
place,
happen?
right? So it's just like a logical jump. Anyway, yeah, you must have just had a nightmare. This place can get to you sometimes because it's so old and creepy.
Well, true.
But we'll go. Yeah,
true, though, because Nancy at one point does have a nightmare that just is just this place getting to her with the pen villains and the paintings just swirling around. Like, there's no other reason for that.
Yep.
So that's not a lie, you know?
Yeah. Yep. We do get another glow stick from Jane, though, at this point, and we are able to go back into the tunnel to explore further, and we do come to that curse that Linda was talking about. It says, only the blameless shall pass here. All others shall transform into beasts. Tooth and nail shall grow long. Hair shall turn coarse, till their aspect be as loathsome as their cold hearts. Prove thy worthiness and memorialize here the innocent one so wrongly condemned for saving lives, else consider thyself right and truly cursed. So, of course, this is talking about Eleanor, and there's like a little panel with runes on it, and if we enter Eleanor's name in runes, it will like essentially open up another door in the passageway that leads us to another set of stairs going down deep into the manor. Do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So this passageway is slightly more complicated than the other one we went to because it branches at one point, and one branch leads to this another peephole, good grief, into a library. It also has like this suit of armor like contraption thing, and basically we can use this contraption to control the Mercury statue in the library with the wand, and we need the wand to open one of the columns. We know this from Nigel's notes. And so you have to turn the statue and open its hands in order to be able to get the wand. But this is hilarious, though, because if you do this, I actually don't know. I only ever do this when Nigel is there. So I don't know if you can do it when Nigel is not there and have something else happen. But whenever you move it when Nigel is there, you can hear Nigel react to the statue moving. And eventually he like screams and runs out of the library. It's just so funny. And then the other side of this passageway leads further down to another of those triangle panels. So the other side of that panel, the triangle panel. And so, yes, we have to position all the triangles to be right side up, but you have to go back and forth between this panel and the other one, because when you move some of the triangles on one side, they also move on the other side, and vice versa. But once you do that correctly and all the triangles are facing up, the door opens and we can move forward to another door. Like, seriously, they were very committed to hiding whatever is down here. Above this door is a little box that we open that has a glowing rock inside of it that we can take. And this rock will replace our glow sticks, so we don't have to go back and forth to Jane anymore to get more glow sticks. We just have that rock. I have to ask, though, what the heck is that rock made out of? We don't know. Nobody ever tells us what it is, but it's got to be radioactive, right? Like, why else is it glowing? It's not alive, so it's not like bioluminescence. It's a rock.
It's that phosphorescent powder from a dry creek branch.
Oh my gosh.
That's what it is. The Penvillains got the powder as well. They put it all over the rock.
So beyond this door is a maze of moving rooms, and we have to get to the other side of it. Yes. It's very tricky to navigate, but once you get the hang of it, it's not too hard. Plus, if you make it to the center of this maze, you get a little maze map that will forever tell you where you are inside of the maze, which is handy. And if you successfully avoid the literal death trap rooms on either side of this maze, which will kill you, and make it to the other side, you'll find another door with another panel in it. And this panel has a snake with a snake symbol on it, and then also like these other symbols. And Nancy remarks at this point that we need to figure out what it means. So let's go talk to our resident know-it-all, Nigel. At this point, because I had moved the Mercury statue while he was there and I go back, he has covered the Mercury statue with his sheet. And he says he'll soon be leaving Blackmoor because he has good reason to believe that this place is genuinely haunted, and he doesn't want to stay here a minute longer than he has to.
Bye.
Bye, Nigel. But he's finished his research anyway, and so it doesn't matter. He has enough that he can start writing his book, and he doesn't need to do that here. But he will tell us that that snake symbol is the Ouroboros, and that is associated with alchemy. So I guess this is enough information to prompt an internet search for Nancy. So we can search for alchemy symbols, and we can use that information to decipher all the symbols on the panels. And basically, this shows, the panel will show an alchemy symbol, which I have no idea what kind of ancient technology is at work here, because it doesn't make any sense. But it will flash a little symbol, and that as an alchemy symbol that we have to figure out what that alchemy symbol is, and then figure out what other symbols we need to press in order to, and combine in order to make that, whatever that alchemy symbol is asking for. And we have to do that a few times. Also, if you do this incorrectly, it will explode sometimes, and so you have to be careful there as well. But once we successfully solve that, we can finally get into the fabled alchemy lab. And I think we pretty much knew that this was probably what was down here, and I'm not sure if it's because of Nigel's notes or what, but somebody or something mentions that there is an alchemy lab down here. I think he says that he was looking for it and couldn't find it. And so I think we kind of knew that's what we were looking for. Anyway, this room is really crazy because it's entirely underground, and there are like medieval weapons on the walls. There's tons of alchemy equipment, a forge, and then there's this also big rolling statue on wheels. And also there is like a panel, another panel in the wall that has like a slot in it, and Nancy will remark that this is like a keyhole. So interesting. And down here there is like a ton of really important information, and this is pretty much where we get the bulk of the information that we need to figure out what the heck is going on here. Do you want to take it?
Sure. So there's a bunch of writings down here, the first of which is going to be a journal from Charles Penvillin. And I don't even know where he is in the line of succession.
I should just have it open. He is the 7th generation from 1478 to 1553.
Okay. So in his journal, he mentions that a specific family will be charged with preserving the Penvillin traditions and teaching these traditions to the firstborn child of the appropriate generation under strict secrecy. So this is the Bossany family that he's referring to, that this Bossany family has been appointed to always be the tutor of the Penvillin family. There's also a paper in the book that has officially declared that the initiate may be male or female. So it sounds like this is our indication that Jane is the initiate in this situation. We also see notes that belong to Eleanor's grandson, and he seems to have actually returned and lived here secretly to do his alchemical work, and people around the manor are seeing strange lights around because of it. There's also a book written from Charles Penvillin to the initiate from 1547. And in it, he says that by reading the book, the initiate must have already solved all the puzzles left by their ancestors, and their job is to add their own puzzle. So essentially, we learn that all of these random puzzles in Blackmoor Manor have been put there by previous members of the Penvillin family. So you get initiated by solving all the puzzles, and then you add your own puzzle. So the next person has to also solve yours before they can solve all the ones that came before it.
Which, like, actually, as like a premise, I think is pretty cool. Like, if like I had like a long family history legacy, like that would be really dope to think about. Like, now you have to like add your puzzle to this like long thing of puzzles. Like, that's really cool. What they're like protecting is kind of interesting, but yeah, in general, like if it was just that, if it was just the puzzles, I think it would be cool and interesting.
Yeah, it's a fun thing. I think it's all very strange, though.
Yes.
It gets to be pretty absurd and bizarre when you get the specifics of why all this is happening and how. But he also tells us that if we open all of the columns in the Great Hall, which each column is a previous puzzle from a previous Penvillain, but basically we can direct the movement of the oil that got poured down the hole to the forge. And so we can use that to then make a key to reveal the secret of the first Penvillain, Randolph. So the initiate is to hide their solution to their puzzle in their coat of arms and in the Mutus Liber. Then there are also notes from all the other previous Penvillains in the book detailing things that we have to do in order to get the forge working. So basically, we have to get all 4 elements: earth, which is in liquid form, so that's the oil, and then air, water, and fire. We have to get all that to the forge. And so in order to do that, we have to open all of the columns, which all have a puzzle associated with them. The winds is that rolling statue that's down here in the alchemy lab with us. The water portion of this is the not working fountain in the conservatory. So we'll have to figure out how to get the well working again to get water back to this fountain. And then lastly, the fire is, of course, the forge, but we have to light the forge by using Mercury's wand from the statue to... This is very strange, but there are 3 different gargoyle statues in the manor, and we have to go touch the wand to the head of all the gargoyles. And then once we've done that, we can then run to the hole in the floor where Jane poured the oil, and then tap that, and then that will light the forge.
I will say that you have to restore all the other elements to the forge first. You have to do the fire last,
Right.
Otherwise it won't work. But I will say, like, it doesn't explain that you have to touch the wand to the hole in the floor ever.
No.
And I do think that is a pretty big problem with this, because even this playthrough, I was like, wait, I did it. I did the thing. What am I missing? And then I just remembered, oh, I also have to go touch it to the hole. But if you were just playing this for the first time, you'd have no way of knowing you had to do that.
Right.
Which is annoying. But anyway.
Unless the Mutus Liber like hints at it, but it's not explicit enough that you should be able to know just from looking at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so we look around in the lab a little bit more, and after we're done in there, as soon as we come out, we're going to get a phone call from Ned, and Nancy explains everything that we've found so far, and she says, the lab looks like it's been used recently, like too recently, at least within the past 50 years or so, which is really the last time that anybody should have been down here. And Ned says, oh, the instructions that are left are probably about forging the key that goes into that keyhole in the slot in the wall. Okay. At this point, we will go back to our room at some point, and then when we come out, we will see a cutscene where Mrs. Drake is trying to bring some food to Linda, but Linda is refusing to eat it because that's not what she wants to eat, and Mrs. Drake says that she needs some food because otherwise she's never going to get healthier.
No, she specifically says a healthy digestive system needs roughage, so like veggies and stuff. But are we supposed to understand from this that Linda is only eating raw meat?
We do, because of the steak on the nightstand. Did you get
I didn't
that
get
part?
the steak on the nightstand this time.
Oh, yeah. There's just a raw steak on the nightstand. And Nancy's like, ew. And Linda's like, I told you I get hungry easily. Leave me alone.
Oh my God.
And that's pretty much it. But then in the cutscene with Mrs. Drake, we see Mrs. Drake leave some sort of weird charm hanging over Linda's door, which makes Mrs. Drake seem way more superstitious than maybe we previously would have clocked her as, but okay.
Interesting.
Later, when we're talking to Jane, she'll tell us that someone sent her a horrible message. And this is, for me, this is right after I got the message with the tooth. And so I just assumed that Jane also got a similar one. But if we look at the message, it says, the house is now mine, so of this be warned. Thou hast angered me and shall soon be gone. And then on the back of the note is a rune that Jane says, because it's upside down, it means that she's in danger. And so we're like, don't worry, we will find out who is responsible and who is sending us all these threats. Jane also says that, all of this weird stuff only started happening after you showed up here, Nancy. So how do we know that you're not the one responsible for this? And we're like, oh, you can trust us. And she's like, I hate it here. I wish I'd never moved back here. I wish I'd just stayed with my bio mom in Paris or whatever. So
no, in Rome.
Very sad.
Bio mom's in Rome.
Well, mom lives in Paris, but she's visiting Rome currently.
Oh, I thought she worked.
Yeah.
in Rome.
She's just on a trip to Rome because we see the postcard from Rome, but we do learn that Mom's
an
actually
opera
lives in
singer.
Paris. Mm-hmm.
Oh. I just assumed she lived in Rome. I don't know.
Mm-mm.
Where do we learn that she lives in Paris?
But it said earlier.
Oh.
At some point. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so she's visiting Rome though, which is why we think it's strange that they're both visiting Rome at the same time.
Yeah. It's like it's weirdly implied that Hugh and Jane's biomom are like meeting up in Rome.
Well, if you call Ned about this, Ned will actually say, like, do you think they're having a weird rendezvous together or something?
Yeah.
And Nancy's like, maybe. Who knows? That's kind of strange.
This is wild. That's wild.
But if we call Hugh will actually say, like, oh, thanks for the heads up. I had no idea she was in town. I think I'll, be able to avoid her now. It's like, okay, sure. I'm sure.
Weird.
Okay. But yeah, so we've got to do all these puzzles and everything. We're going to restore the water to the well. We're going to collect the 4 winds. And then we're going to get all the column pieces opened up and then the pipes in them rotated in the correct direction so that they will all connect together. And then the oil will be able to run to be able to light the forge. And then this is where we go around to all the gargoyles and light their heads and then go down to the forge. And then literally this like puff of fire and smoke will come out of the hole in the ground and Nancy will go, yay, we did it.
Mm-hmm. I will say, too, like, there are a ton of puzzles that you have to do in order to accomplish all of this. There are just
a lot.
Too many, and I just didn't think it was relevant that we walk through all of them. But there's, like, a lot. Because, like you said, there's a puzzle basically for each column. And some of them you may have already done, you can do earlier, and some of them you can't. But then, and then there's also, like, the puzzle for collecting the 4 winds, the puzzle for, like, using the water. And so it's just a lot, and I just don't think we need to specifically talk about each one of them. Just know there's a lot.
Yeah. I will also mention Jane's guinea pig just real quick because I've seen this theory. Well, we see a picture of a guinea pig on Jane's desk or whatever, and she's sad and she won't talk about it because she says that her guinea pig died recently. But then if we go into the well before we do the water puzzle or whatever, we'll find a note from Jane's uncle that's like, here, you said that your guinea pig was like randomly, like its hair was like falling off in patches. So this is my like hair growth cream or whatever, because, he's balding, I guess. And so the idea is that Jane was like testing this hair growth stuff on her guinea pig.
I never got that note.
Fans theorize that maybe she killed her guinea pig on accident by doing this, but there is some weirdness here to the hair growth formula stuff and the guinea pig being dead. But anyway, now it's time to forge the key using the information that we have in the Mutus Liber. And in the lab is this mold that we need to pour metal into to make the key itself. But if we go around to all of the different coat of arms for the Penvillins, each one has like a little weird shape somewhere on their coat of arms, and if we use that, the book will tell us which coat of arms goes with which slot in this key thing. But basically we have to arrange the shape from the coat of arms onto this key thing to have different notches appear on the key so that the notches are all in the right place. I don't think that I explained that very well, but essentially we have to make the key using this mold that we have to figure out how to shape the mold exactly. But I think you should take the ending here.
Okay. So once we have successfully molded the key, we can take it to that slot on the wall and put it in and open this lock. Right as we do that, Jane will come in behind us and say, whatever you found is mine. I'm the Penvillin, and I would have found it first if I didn't have to spend all day in rubbish lessons. Kind of fair. Okay. Inside this vault, we see a stone, and it looks like a meteorite, Nancy will remark, which Jane ends up being really annoyed by. She's like, it's a stupid rock. All of this was to find just like a rock. I mean, a space rock, Jane, but yes. Essentially. And she thinks that this can't be it. This can't be what all of this was for, and that there must be something hidden under this rock. And so she goes to take it off the stand, despite Nancy like saying, no, Jane, don't. But she takes it off the stand, and we can get out of the way in time. But Jane ends up getting trapped under this large iron box. she asks for help and she says she's sorry for everything. And we're like, everything? What do you mean, Jane? What everything? And while she's trapped in this iron box, she explains that she is the one who is responsible for Linda's affliction. She made her think that she is sick. She left that curse in her room, gave her the allergy pills prescribed to Mrs. Drake to make her feel tired. Yes, she put her uncle's hair medicine in her lotion to make her grow hair. And basically, she says she just wanted her to go away. So she made her think that she was turning into the Beast of Blackmoor. She wanted her bio mom and dad to get back together. But now she's like running out of air in this iron box. And she's 12, so we have to help her. We can't just let her die. We can lift the box off of her with the big rolling statue thing that we used earlier in the wind puzzle. And that's the end of the game. In our closing letter to Ned, Nancy basically just regurgitates everything we just learned from Jane. And Hugh, we learned, was very upset when he found out about Jane's machinations here. But apparently Jane apologized to Linda, and now they're all going to try to be a family. I sincerely hope that a lot of therapy is involved in this whole try to be a family portion of this, because holy jeez. But anyway, now that Hugh knows all of this and knows about this Penvillin legacy, he's actually really interested in it because he thinks it's cool. And he, of course, doesn't think the meteorite is magical like his ancestors may have, but he is helping Jane come up with her own puzzle to help safeguard it. And Nancy has been sworn to secrecy, much to Nigel's annoyance, because at one point he came back to the manor to get his laptop and realized that something was up, and now he's been hounding Nancy, trying to get her to tell him what she found out. And she says at the end of the letter that if he calls her one more time, she's telling on him to Mrs. Drake. Just funny and cute.
Yes.
Cute little ending. Okay. My God. Oh, well, and then at the very end, you get an award based on what it is that you've done the most throughout the game, basically. I got Historica Penvillin because, of course,
Nice.
I clicked on all of the Penvillin names on the family tree.
Very nice.
And then at the end, you get a sneak peek for the Old Clock, which is the next game, Secret in the Old Clock. So, what did you get? What award did you get?
I think I got Sleuthier Druis, which is just, I solved the puzzles quickly because I used my cheats.
Your notes.
That I have. So, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Where do we start?
Oh my God. Okay. Let's start with Jane.
Okay.
Because I know that a lot of people want to say that Jane is insane and a psychopath, and I think that that's maybe a little bit funny to think of in the context of this game. But ultimately, I just think it's just really sad.
This poor child's neglected. That's what's happening here.
And clearly she's very intelligent, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure she's been tutored for years or whatever, but she's clearly very bright. But it's just the saddest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
It's just she's been well, I guess she didn't always live in the manor. I guess she used to live in the U.S. with Hugh. Because they used to live in the U.S., and that's how he met Linda, and then they moved back to the manor because Linda has to live here for 6 months.
Right.
But so maybe she wasn't always neglected, right? Maybe she did have friends at one point or whatever, and maybe that makes it a little bit less sad because maybe she really is a psychopath and she's only been here for a few months or a couple months and is already poisoning her stepmom. But it's just ultimately just so freaking sad. And Hugh is the biggest villain in this whole thing.
Right.
Because he's off in Rome doing God knows what, cheating on his wife of only a few months with his ex-wife.
Right.
And leaving his daughter, who he's weirdly jealous of, alone here to fend for herself, basically, with nobody but a tutor for a friend who's probably not the greatest friend.
Right.
I mean, wow.
I feel bad for her.
I do too. It's sad.
Yeah.
But okay, so we think she may have killed her guinea pig on purpose or on accident.
Possibly.
Possibly.
She's somehow responsible. Whether or not there was intention there is another question. But yeah.
I do think that Jane is purposefully, like psychopath or not, I think she is purposefully manipulative.
Yeah.
And I think you can clearly know this and see this in retrospect from the whole like calling Linda mummy thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, definitely.
Because she is so clearly trying to play Nancy to make her think that like she's this innocent, nice girl or whatever, and that she actually really loves Linda and wants attention from Linda, when this whole time she's actually been trying to get Linda the F out of here because she hates her and wants her bio mom back. Like this whole like, oh mummy, oh I mean Linda. And the whole, oh mummy, will you read a book to me or whatever? It's all for show. It's 100% for show.
Well, it was to like implant the like suggestion in her mind of like, oh, let's read this book about werewolves so that it will be at the front of your mind. Like it's all calculated.
Yes.
100%. Yeah.
Insane. That's so crazy.
Yeah. I mean, she might be a sociopath, but I mean,
I think, I think to a certain extent when maybe I'm a sociopath too, but I think that when we're kids and you, like she's 12 years old, when you learn that your behavior can influence other people, I think kids naturally can be a little bit manipulative.
They want to test that.
They want to test
which
it.
Is normal.
It's normal to a certain extent. Now, I don't know poisoning someone is I don't think that's normal, but
it is extreme. It's extreme. But she's in an extreme situation.
True. But yeah, I don't know. I just think it's crazy because she acts younger than she is, I think, to gain sympathy and to make it seem like, well, she could never be responsible for all of this stuff, and she could never, because she's, still wants, her stepmommy to read her a book at night, and she just wants to play games, and she's so lonely and sad, and somebody left me this awful note, and it means I'm in danger. And Nancy, all this weird stuff started happening when you came here. How do I know that you aren't the one responsible when the whole time it's her? Yep. Like the only reason to say that is to make Nancy like feel sorry and worried about her. And then for that conversation to wrap up with her going, I just hate it here. I just wish we had never come here, is basically her just trying to manipulate Nancy into like taking her side on that and being like, you're right, Jane, like wild.
This feels very Agatha Christie. I remember when I played this for the very first time, I was like, I mean, it's so obvious that it's Jane, but they would never do that, right? They wouldn't make the sweet, innocent kid be the villain. They're not going to do that. And of course they did. But yeah, it makes so much sense. And like, it's a better motive than anybody else would have,
I can't remember what it was that I thought when the first time I played it, because it was so long ago, I don't remember what I thought about the culprit. But yeah, totally. I think it's just it's so classic. It's like the least, like the most unassuming character is always always ends up being the culprit. And I know I love this, maybe is shifting gears a little bit, but I just love the way that this whole game really plays on those classic tropes. Like the gaslighting plot, like Linda's gaslighting. Yeah. I just like, that is so classic, maybe Victorian, I don't know, whatever, of like a woman basically being told that like her illness is like nothing, when in reality, like she is real reasons that she's getting sick. It's like the yellow wallpaper or whatever,
right.
But like I love it so much, not because I love women being gaslighted, like I hate that, right? But I just love like how it's such a classic trope, and to get to see it play out in the context of a Nancy Drew game, I just think is really fun, because you don't get that
very gothic,
right? Yeah. Okay, but do you want to talk about Hugh a little bit more? Maybe we've already talked everything about Hugh, but I just think he's the worst.
Yeah.
He's the absolute
not a good
worst.
Father.
Horrible father.
Terrible
husband. Probably cheating on his wife right now. Who knows? But like, yeah, has like castigated his wife to live off here by herself, and is like kind of really, I mean, he's not mean to her. He does act concerned or whatever, but like when Nancy talks to him, he's a little bit flippant about it and kind of makes it seem like it's Linda's fault.
And not his problem.
And not his
like,
problem.
I'm busy. Y'all figure it out.
He's busy. He doesn't know what's going on with her, but like he's not in a place. Of course he's concerned, but there's nothing he can do about it. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm sorry. You just married this woman just a few months ago, maybe like 4 months at most, right? I think it was maybe actually like 2. And you leave her, and then you're like, well, she says she's sick. That she's getting really mean to me. I don't like her anymore. So I'm busy. Just showing like absolutely no care for his wife, his family, his whole situation. Like, I'm sorry, but like, this is like, I don't know, maybe it's not leave of absence worthy for like you to not work or something, but it's certainly enough for you to be like really upset with the fact that you have to leave your family right now while your wife is not doing well. And this is like scary and serious, especially considering the 6 months habitation clause. Like, shouldn't you be worried about that? Shouldn't you be more concerned about that? Like, does Linda want to leave? Do you not know if Linda wants to leave? Do you not care that Linda wants to leave? I do think there is like an argument that maybe he really doesn't care if Linda wants to leave or not. Maybe
this is all a huge inconvenience for him, if anything.
Because
it's not a concern for him.
I mean, I would think like, well, at least even if you didn't care about your wife, at least the potentiality of like losing out on your inheritance, you wouldn't want. But maybe, I mean, he's a diplomat, so clearly he's somewhat independently wealthy. Maybe he really doesn't care about, you know, getting the inheritance or not, and really he just wants to be with his ex-wife again. And so he's like, yeah, whatever, drop her off there and she'll leave on her own and I can just remarry, you know. Yeah. Like,
Ew.
The worst.
Ew.
The worst.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What else?
Okay, so let me get this straight with the Penflins. I think this probably is the part of the game that is like maybe the most disconnect for me. That it's like the least compelling part of the whole story is this family lineage thing.
Yeah.
I totally understand being interested in your own family genealogy. I totally understand, being interested in that as a way to like connect to your own culture and your own personal history and all that stuff. But I think that this is just so extreme that the Penflins just seem absolutely absurd and pretentious.
Insane, yes.
Insane for all of this. So Randolph, right, was the very first Penflin, right, who inherited this land or was granted this land by the king for his whatever military pursuits, right? And then he finds a meteor that we're supposed to think, I don't know if we're told this specifically, but we're supposed to think that he thinks it's magical.
It's implied that he believes, or it's said that he believes that the reason why he won the battle at Poitiers he was like a lot
because of this rock?
Because of the rock. Yeah.
So he finds his lucky rock and then he thinks that his son is such an idiot that he decides that his son can't be trusted with the rock, so his grandson must be it. So now we've set up this tradition of like the every other generation thing. And then we're going to go like Illuminati with it and go secret society, but not a secret society because it's only every other generation in this lineage. So it's a secret society of one person keeping this secret.
2 if you count the Bossinies, you know.
And also the king has appointed the Bossini family to help protect this secret.
Well, not the king, Randolph or whoever.
Well, whoever, yeah. There was something else in there about the king. Like some of Charles's notes were kind of blurred out. And so you could kind of see that he was talking about the king, but we don't know specifically what. And we're not supposed to be able to know. But you're telling me that they set all of this up just to protect this rock?
Yeah.
And then and I could totally see it being like a fun thing. I mean, if I found out that I had an ancestor that was involved in the Salem witch trials, that'd be so interesting to me, you know, and I would definitely want to know more about that person and like what their life was like. And I would definitely be interested in that way. But to like what am I trying to say here? But to make it into this like secret society thing that is all these like shrouded in secrets and like
it's self-important.
It's very self-important, and
Well,
I think it's just very bizarre.
Yeah. It's very British aristocracy. Like, it's like they're trying to, because Randolph was like gifted this land from the king, and because he thinks he was like this great military guy or whatever, he credits all that to this rock. He's like, well, I'm so important that I must protect this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do think they're incredibly lucky that they have always like, that they've been able to maintain this direct line, that they didn't have anybody just, I mean, they did have, the only gay Penvillain.
Oh, yeah.
Who was it? I forgot. Eleanor's
Was
father.
that Corbin?
No, it's Eleanor's
Eleanor's
dad.
father. That's right. Yeah. Because Eleanor was adopted.
Eleanor was adopted. Which we didn't even talk about that, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
James Penvillain.
Okay.
Which, by the way, he said that James was flamboyant and never married.
Yep.
So gay.
Yeah.
But anyway, that they managed to maintain this line of basically parent, child. Like, you're telling me that nowhere along the line somebody had one child that died and it had to go to like an uncle, which like it's been hundreds of years, like hundreds of years, true centuries. And you're able to maintain this like, that's what's impressive to me. And it's impressive that you've been able
and to also have the Bossany family doing all this at the same time.
And to get every other generation to buy into this enough to add their own puzzle once they make it through. That's insane to me. That's the true feat, is how they managed to get everybody to keep adding puzzles, because at a certain point, I feel like if I had gotten to that point and I was like, oh, it's a meteorite, that's kind of lame, you know?
Yeah.
But I guess you do. The thing is that it takes place over somebody's lifetime, right? So you have a lifetime to kind of figure out what it is that you want to do and how you want to think about it, I guess. But yeah.
I don't know. It all seems so unrealistic to me that any of this could even happen in the first place. Like you said, that nobody's ever died before they got to do it, or, you know, something like that. But I don't know. I just think it all is just so lame.
That's definitely
like,
fair.
Y'all are so weird.
It's
y'all
fair.
are so weird to do this like Illuminati stuff, cloak and dagger in the middle of the night.
Well, honestly, I think it's the Bossanese who are the weirdest here, because you have to think, like, they're really the ones who are upholding this tradition for everybody, right? Because it's their job to teach these initiates, these kids, all of this stuff. And even the way that Ethel talks about the Penvillans, you would think that she is serving the freaking royal family here.
Right.
Like, she's like, the Penvillans are the true treasure of Blackmoor Manor. And it's like, whoa, lady, like, what are you smoking? Like, the Bossanese are the ones who are up the Penvillans' ass. Like, that's what's weird to me.
Like, y'all just have too much money and too much time on your hands.
Well, that's true.
Also, it's just annoying to me that, like, the end, like, Penvillain treasure has nothing to do with the mystery that we're solving. Like, Nancy does not ever need to find the Penvillain treasure in order to figure out what's going on with Linda. And I feel like every other mystery that we have, where there's two unconnected mysteries, they always do end up connecting. And there is a connection here, but just not enough for me.
Yeah.
That it's just like, oh, Nancy, you just wanted to do all this. You didn't have to do this to solve the mystery. You just personally wanted to find out what was going on here. So you stopped figuring out what was wrong with Linda and then just like focused on this instead, and you just happened to find out what was going on with Linda along the way.
Yeah.
That kind of bothers me.
I think it would work a little bit better if we got a little bit more investigation, or we're able to talk a little bit more, at least, to Linda about her feelings about this curse and the Penvillans themselves.
Yeah.
Excuse me, because she talks about the curse, but then she says that she won't repeat the curse to us. But it's the curse that mentions Eleanor. And she mentions Eleanor only vaguely in passing about the witch and all of that stuff. But if we were able to see Linda as being weirded out by the Penvillans, by, you know, thinking that they have something to do with her illness, that it's Eleanor who's cursed her. And so we have to figure out, like how that could be possible by investigating the Penvlins. I think that connection makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, I agree. I think in the game they don't do a great job of connecting them very well. But I think there is opportunity for that had we done a little bit more legwork with with Linda specifically, I think.
It's more of a side plot that ends up being the main plot, and it's like that's not why we're here.
Yeah, true. But I was going to say, speaking of Penvlins, do you want to talk a little bit about the Penvlin family history and some interesting things about it?
Sure.
Okay. So we didn't talk that much about Eleanor Penvlin, but she's kind of like our main character, Penvlin. Right? So she's, the quote unquote witch who ended up being burned at the stake, potentially by Cromwell or whatever. But so she, as a baby, was like left on the doorstep of Blackmoor Manor, and her father James ended up adopting her and taking her in, and she became the next Penvlin in the line, right? But we don't know where she came from. And even in Nigel's notes, he talks about this and he asks, like, where did she come from? Like, I need more local sources from the time in order to try to figure out where it is that she came from. And that's a mystery that we can never solve. Like, we don't ever get any information about that. And I just think that that's so interesting, like, such an interesting, like, plot, like, point to dive into, thinking about where Eleanor could have come from. And I do not know enough about British history to be able to even pose a hypothesis on this. But I do think it's interesting that as an adult, we didn't talk about this either. Gosh, there's just so many details to this. Her whole thing, the whole reason why the secret passageways exist, and the people hearing bells and seeing the floating hands or whatever carrying torches is because she was sneaking people out, helping people escape the country while Cromwell was in power, because he was I think he was persecuting Catholics,
right? Or
Protestants. What are the other Catholics or Protestants? Who knows at the time? But so to think about, like, maybe Eleanor was a product of that somehow. Like maybe her parents had to flee and had to leave her, and so that's why she's devoting her life to saving those people. Like, right. I think that's kind of cool to think about. But also, did you realize that she was 21 when she died?
I think so, yeah.
I never realized that. And I don't know, like, in, like, retrospective, like, it was just because when I played it, I was so young, and I was like, oh, she's an older Penvlin person.
Yeah.
And the whole witch thing, I thought she was, like, an old person. She was 21.
Yeah.
Which is just insane to me, to think of, like, a 21-year-old having so much power and being able to, like, save people's lives. And of course, obviously that comes a lot from, like, her money, right? And her position. But to the point where Cromwell hated her so much that he had her killed.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane to me. Yeah. But so she's obviously the biggest character, Penvlin character. But there are also, like, tons of other Penvlins who have, like, their own stories and like things that are like references. Like Philippe Penvlin was believed to be a pirate.
Yeah.
And that's, like, where the source of their wealth is. Like, he went to the Americas and then brought all of this money back from his pirating.
Not because the king gave you a section of England, but yeah.
From stealing, yes. Let's see what else. Oh, so from the family tree, I think is where we get some of the most interesting information. So we learn that there are twins in there. I think they're twins in their family line, George and Henry or Henri, who died in the same year. Oh, no, I don't think they were twins, actually. They were just brothers. Died in the same year on an expedition to Oak Island in Canada in 1751.
Yeah.
What a reference.
Right?
That is. Also, can you believe that we haven't had a Nancy Drew game about Oak Island at this point? Like, I think we just need that. Also, so we get a couple references from the family tree from other games as well. Arthur Penvlin, Jane will tell us, who was alive in 1840 to 1910, was a part of El Diablo's gang. And of course, that's a reference to Message in a Haunted Mansion. And then Obadiah from 1895 to 1975 married some lady named Eustacia that Jane says is still alive and calls them sometimes. And this is a reference to Eustacia Drop-Off from the final scene.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's other references, a ton of other references in there as well that I just didn't catch or pick up on. But I just think it's just so nice that they did all of that.
Also, it's not in this game, but in Waverly Academy, we find out Eleanor Penvillin attended Waverly Academy, which is so fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes you'll see just like little Penvillin references in other games as well, which if you have this history, how can you not do that? You know what I mean? Did we get a Philippe Penvillin reference in Ransom of the Seven Ships? Because we totally should have. I don't know if we did or not, but we totally should have.
There's got to be something.
There's got to be.
There's a bunch of random references in that game anyway, so I'm sure it's there, and it's just not coming to my mind. But
yeah. Oh, and like there's a great aunt or something, and a grandniece or something, or maybe a grandmother and a granddaughter or something who were French resistance fighters.
Oh yeah.
Rose and Rachel. We need a reference about
Danger
them
by Design.
in Danger by Design.
Right.
Like, why don't we get that? Maybe we do. I don't know. But yeah, just like so many. There's someone named Martha in their train line who wore bizarre outfits and was the first woman to ride on a steam train.
Good for her.
What is that story? Like
right?
Who put that in there and what does it mean, guys? What does it mean? Yeah. So there's just tons of like interesting things in there. Colin was a spy for England in 1677. She said,
yeah.
Like one of them was a playwright. There were tons of nuns in their family. They had twins, a priest and a knight, one who died in a joust. Some lady married some guy named the Lord of Limerick. Lots of nuns. Oh yeah, Malachi, who was Alan's dad, raced cars. And like was a race car driver. Like it's just like so many interesting directions they went with this, which was like they just didn't have to do. You know what I mean? Like we could just get a family tree and we just can't click on all the names. Like that could have been totally possible and nobody would have like batted an eye at that. But the fact that you can click on every single one of them and they give you like this random like obscure stuff, like this is the kind of detail and just like the fruitiness that like I need in a Nancy Drew game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I really appreciate the dedication here.
Yeah. They were ready to make this a big game and they did that every chance that they could. Anywhere they could squeeze a detail in, they did.
Yes. Oh, okay. But anyway.
Yeah.
It makes me really excited.
Yeah. Okay. What else we got?
This is just a random small thing, but the creatures, like the gargoyles that are like on the side of Jane's door frame, blink.
Yep.
And we never get an explanation for that.
Yep. Who knows?
What the heck is that?
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll blink, sometimes they won't whenever you approach the door, but when they do blink, like it's obvious, like it's a blink.
Yeah.
And
it's unsettling. Yeah.
It's very unsettling. And I just like the fact that we don't get any kind of explanation for that. I guess we could say, oh, it's another peephole or something, maybe from a secret passageway, but like that's just a guess. Like really what it seems like is like it's haunted. This place is haunted.
Right. Yeah.
Super haunted. I feel like there was something else I wanted to say about Ethel, but I don't remember.
It's just so crazy to me that Ethel, like all the things that had to be in place to get Ethel where she is. Like it's one thing to keep the Penvillin family in Blackmoor Manor, but to keep the whole Boston family as the tutors this entire time and still have Mrs. Drake say that the family has never hired a single employee. Like, okay.
Yeah. What a diss to the Boston family.
Right. Like they've been so loyal to y'all.
Our whole lives, not just our lives, our entire family's lives to your family. And you're like, we don't have any permanent employees.
They're all in
we
there.
are more permanent than permanent.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I just think Ethel is a really fun and cool character. Like I think she's probably the coolest of all of the characters that we really ever get. I mean, yes, I know that it's weird that she is like all, very creepy about the Penflins or whatever.
She's very scary looking.
She's very scary. She's very severe, and she does not play. You know what I mean? Like, she is not here to mess around.
No,
like,
she's not.
But then I just think about her, like, conceptually as a character. Like, I don't know if you've ever spent any time around 12-year-olds as an adult.
Yes, I have.
But it's like, it's not a fun time sometimes, you know? Sometimes 12-year-olds can be great. I imagine teaching Jane is like trying to, like, you would rather, like, take a drill to your skull.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and there's even, like, there's some, like, a little bit of an allusion to that, too, because, like, sometimes when you'll walk by the door, you'll hear Jane say, like, some things, and Ethel has to go, oh, look at the time. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like, I think she asks, like, why the 100 Years' War was called the 100 Years' War when it wasn't 100 years, and Ethel's like, I do not want to go into this with you, child. You know? So, like, I can only imagine how this person who has been, like, so well educated and so, like, primed to, like, do all these things that she thinks are, like, really important, mostly just have to spend the bulk of her days teaching a 12-year-old about all of this stuff is gotta be brutal. It would make me have that, like, kind of like mess with me kind of, and you'll get the horns kind of prerogative too, because geez Louise.
Oh yeah, she's got to be stern. She really has to be. And I have no issues with Ethel. Like, she's supposed to be scary, and it's very effective in that way.
Right.
I just wish that they had given her, like, a permanent location so that we could go talk to her more often, because I don't feel like that we got enough conversations with her. And that's my only real issue with her, is that we just needed more. We needed more of her backstory and her motivations.
It would have been fine if, like, she had a location that she was often at, but she's just not there very frequently.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we could just, like, sometimes, like, not have her be there, and then we could still do the jump scares, but just also have a place where we could just get, like, a little bit more information if we want to go talk to her, like, we can. Because I want to know, like, what her deal is. I want to know where she's from. I want to know more about the Bossany family in particular, because I think they're the weirdest element, like I said before, of this whole plot. But I just think it has to be, she's such an elusive figure. And I know they're kind of doing that on purpose to kind of enhance the mystique of the whole, like, legacy and ritual aspect of it. But I wish it was a mystery we could solve, you know?
I almost wish that they could have made her, it would have been so easy to set this up as, like, a red herring, because they almost started this way with the ritual, that they could try to twist it and imply that, like, Ethel's putting her up to all this weirdness, that like really Ethel's behind this, and Ethel's the one that's like getting to Linda because she, you know, maybe she feels like she's owed something after all this generations of work that her family has done. And at the last minute you find out, no, it actually is Jane that is the mastermind. But, you know, if we'd had the chance to talk to Ethel more often, we could have put some more hints in there that like maybe Ethel's more controlling in this than we might initially think. But then you find out she's not actually.
Right.
But,
well,
you know.
even, you know, a potential motive could be like that Linda doesn't think that Jane needs the Bossany tutor.
Yeah.
That she thinks that she's weird just like Hugh does. And so she wants them out of the picture, you know?
Yep, so that she can do her job. Yeah.
So she can do her job, which she's clearly very dedicated to. But no, I do think, we should talk about that a little bit, because I think it is very possible that Ethel was contributing a little bit more to this, at least maybe not overtly, like maybe she didn't know, but you could definitely see where she could be influencing Jane to do the wrong thing.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Like you think about like the kitchen explosion, right? Like Jane says that the reason why the kitchen exploded was because a snickerdoodle experiment that Ethel put her up to for studying like the oxidation rates of different cookie doughs or something is what caused that explosion, right? But maybe that wasn't what Ethel had her looking into. And I could kind of see that too, especially with the whole alchemy thing. I'm guessing that Jane was probably doing some alchemical experiments or something, and that makes a whole lot more sense to me for causing an explosion than cookie dough.
Right.
Like, that doesn't seem possible. Like, what explosive ingredient? I mean, I guess flour, but like, there's no way.
Yeah.
That, I mean, there's
Not
no way.
in normal
No.
circumstances. No.
No. So I think that was probably, at least the kitchen explosion was definitely influenced by Ethel and was lied about later. And so, like, I could see her trying to influence Jane to take risks and to make decisions in order to, like, exercise a greater level of influence, right? Because she sees Jane as being like this important figure in this long historical line of Penguins, and she is trying to mold and shape her into being one of these, like, great minds or one of these movers and shakers, right? And so to think about, like, well, Jane, you can actually make things happen, you know? There is the power of suggestion, you know, by, like, teaching her about all of this stuff. And if you think, like, there could be, like, she could have motive for doing that, like, that makes it all the more interesting. I do specifically want to talk about, too, the Lady in Black that we see, because I didn't get her in this playthrough, but I have before, so I've seen the cutscene where you wake up in the middle of the night and you go out of the room and you see the Lady in Black running down the hallway, and you can kind of follow her, but she gets away. But if we're supposed to believe that Jane is the one who's responsible for all of this weird stuff going on, her pretending to be the Beast of Blackmoor, making Linda think that she's turning into the Beast of Blackmoor, she was also masquerading as the Lady in Black.
But the Lady in Black is way too tall to be Jane.
Way too tall to be Jane. So the only person that it could be is Ethel.
Yeah. That's true. And they know... See, I like all this. I totally buy this theory that Ethel was behind all these things more than like just an innocent, hey, go make cookies or something. Like, I love that flavor they put in there, but it feels like a missed opportunity to just give us a little bit more. You know, give us a spot with Ethel's stuff, but also let us find a little cloak in her belongings or something. You know, like we need more.
Well, or have them wear those cloaks in the ritual, so it's not even a question. Like we know they have the cloaks, like. But they don't. But they could have. Right. You know what I mean? Like,
I need more of it. Missed opportunity not to give us that. Yeah.
Like, you're telling me that Ethel would not have relished the opportunity to to dress up as Eleanor Penvillin,
right?
Or, like, you know, further enhance this rumor of the Beast of Blackmoor, which has kept people kind of wary and away of the whole Penvillin institution. That's her whole job, is to protect the Penvillin legacy. And she would relish every opportunity to uphold that, which Jane is very literally doing by making people believe that these things are real. Like, that just makes so much sense to me.
Yeah.
And now I know Jane is a very bright and clever 12-year-old, and I think she could have come up with all of this on her own. I do think that is possible. I just think it's so much more interesting to think about her being influenced into doing that. Yeah.
The story needs that little nudge. Just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything else.
Yeah, I think that's all I've got. I'm going to listen to the soundtrack all day long. It's so good.
Know.
So good.
Yep.
Well, flashlight score?
Okay. Oh. Okay. So I love this game. I love playing it. I love it every time. I can see the flaws with it, though.
Sure.
Just because I love it doesn't mean I think it's flawless. So I would give it, I'd give it an even 4.
Okay.
An even 4, because I think it's a really good game. Well, maybe like a 4.5. 4 to 4.5 is where I handle, because I think they just did such a great job. I just really appreciate the effort and the scope of this game. And like you were saying, it's so ambitious. I do think they missed the boat in some places, and I think they could have developed it just a little bit more, and it would have been just perfect. But yeah, the puzzles are a little bit insane, so they could have done a little bit of editing there, I think. And I do wish that we had gotten a little bit more narrative explanation of what was going on. But other than that, I think it's grand. Yeah. So 4 to 4.5.
4.5. Yeah. I think I can only give it a 3, unfortunately. It is objectively a great game. It's just not the greatest game for me personally. And I've said why, but there's nothing bad about it. It certainly deserves at least a 3, but just for me personally, I don't love it enough. Is it fun? Absolutely. It's a Nancy Drew game. Of course it's fun. Of course I love it because it's a Nancy Drew game. But beyond that, it's pretty middle of the road for me.
Okay.
Well, but overall, a fun one, and I'm glad we got to do it.
Me too. Yes. Me too. But next up, Kori, we have another Her Interactive PC game, of course. And this one we had our patrons vote on. So thank you very much, everyone over our Gifted Gumshoes over on Patreon. So next up, we are covering number 16, The White Wolf of Icicle Creek. I really enjoy White Wolf of Icicle Creek. It's also a game that I feel like I've played all these games a lot. But this one is the best because of all the chores you get to do. And I love chores.
Yes.
I love cleaning the rooms. I love making the food. I love it. I love it. I think overall the story I'm not super crazy about. Like, it's not a super standout mystery to me. But overall the game and the activities that you do in it are fun. So I like it. So
I feel the same way. It's one of my most replayed games overall just because how much I love doing the chores and stuff. I see some people are like, it gets annoying at the end because you have to stop the mystery to go cook. And sometimes I will just I'll set to the next day so that I can go make breakfast again. And then I'll just jump the timer forward to lunch. And then I'll jump the timer I'll just spend several days doing chores and then I'll go back to the mystery. So for me, I love it. Yeah, it's a great one. So
not
I'm really
everybody's
excited to play
a fan
it again.
of the chores, but I am also.
Which is totally fair. So totally fair. But it'll be a fun one to talk about as well.
Yes, excited for that. And we will see you then, regular Drews.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Regular Nancy Drew. Email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com.
If you like this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Regular Nancy Drew and Twitter at RegularND.
You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons at the $3 level vote on upcoming episode topics and get exclusive access to our Scoop Sesh series.
And all patrons receive early access to each episode as well as weekly bonus content.
And to all you regular Drews out there, thanks for listening.